Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand finals of ShoutCraft America, live here from New York City. It's about as American as you can get. My name is TotalBiscuit, and today I'm joined by AxSlav for the co-commentary and analysis. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to cast these great American StarCraft players. Of course, this is the finals of ShoutCraft America. Why don't you walk us through what we've seen so far in this tournament?
We've seen some fantastic games from 16 of the top grandmasters in the US. They qualified by attaining the top 16 American spots. So if you are anywhere in the continental US and you are a permanent resident or a citizen of those countries, you are eligible. And as a result, we ended up with 4 Canadians, a single Mexican, surprisingly no South American representatives, a few just missed out by a couple of places, and then the rest North American. And the final that we have is in fact between Canada and the US of A. So that in itself is going to be great. A little bit of hockey rivalry going on there. That's always good to see. All right, now what we are going to be seeing, of course, are the 2 players that were remaining after a single group stage, then a best of 5, then a best of 7. So these guys made their way through the entire thing. Now I can tell you a little bit about both of them. ROOTKane went through what many would consider to be the group of death to get here. He was in there with his teammate Massa, considered the secret weapon of Root. He was also in there with E.G. Suppy and Hello Kitty pulls out the surprise to come in second in that group, but Kane 4-0s the group. Slams it completely. It was really impressive to watch. He played like an absolute god. Now, we also have State. Now, State comes out as first place of a group where many people expected QXC to take the top spot. We had QXC, very well-known player, veteran of the scene, and 3 teamless players. State was one of them. He goes through, only dropping a single map on a coin flip build against QXC, dominates the rest of the group, no problem. And that was incredibly impressive to watch. We then had Kane go up against QXC in a unbelievable fight that went 3-2, the craziest Widowmine game I've ever seen.
Is that the Whirlwind map?
That was the Whirlwind map,
awesome
man.
one.
Oh, he got 60 Widowmines on the map any given time. Nonsense, crazy nonsense. He gets through that and then fights an incredibly close series with Gosu User. Gosu User tries to make the comeback from 3-0 down, almost makes it, and then cracks at the end. Makes a bad decision, goes 10 pool, but then doesn't attack, and gets eliminated by Kane. And Kane makes his way through as the group representative for this. And then State, on the other hand, State really played incredibly well. He takes down Hello Kitty, just smacks him about, and then he takes down Root Minigun 4-0. Clean sweep, State looking rock solid this entire tournament. Now, as you are well aware, if you've been watching ShoutCraft America, you can check out everything and support the players over on shoutcraft.com. There are the player tip jars. You are free to throw money at them, which is always a good thing. What we also have is the pre-game face-off. We like to hear the banter. We like to hear those guys go at each other and psych each other out before the tournament. This time around, we have them live and in person. I'm not guaranteeing a fist fight, but it could happen. And we will be going over to the stage with AxSlav to talk with Kane and State. Take it away.
Thanks so much, John. Of course, guys, welcome to the NYC studio. I have both our players next to me. We got Kane and we got State. They're ready to go, and they're honestly really nice in person, so I'm going to see what I can get out of them. But State, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, this is going to be your first PVZ of the tournament, which is a pretty interesting stat. So we don't necessarily know where you stand as far as the matchup is concerned. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts about the matchup going into this final?
I think it's balanced, but it's my worst matchup, definitely. So I'm going to do my best to do well, but I have no idea what to expect.
Now, speaking of which, I imagine y'all play against each other a lot on ladder. Can you talk a little bit about your history with Kane and your chances going into this final that you think?
Kane usually beats me on ladder. I think the stats are probably like 70-30, so I don't know. I feel like I might be better in a tournament situation, but I'm really not sure.
Would you say the experience factor is going to help you a bit? I feel like you've gone to a lot more actual live tournaments than perhaps Kane has.
I do, but I still get nervous. So.
Okay. All right. And Kane, of course, your matches leading up to the final. We had you in the quarterfinals versus QXC and against Ghostuse in the semifinals. I think it was a 3-2 and a 4-3. Very close matches. Do you see this match being as close as those matches?
Well, PvZ or ZVP is always my best matchup, so I feel a lot more confident going into this match, but State's a really good player, so I'm not too sure what to expect. I know on ladder, I checked the stats beforehand, and I'm 13-1 versus him, so we'll see. We'll see.
Is it going to be easy? Is it going to be hard? I mean, come on, give me something here.
I don't know. I think it'll be pretty easy, but you never know. You never know.
State, any response to that?
I'm hoping it's a close series.
These guys are way too nice, TotalBiscuit, but certainly set up for an awesome final. Back to you guys at the desk.
Man, we're going to have to fill it with a little bit of caster banter here. AxSlav, you're absolutely terrible at your job. Why is that?
Well, you know, it happens when you're just kind of bad at everything in general.
Okay.
Then, of course, if you're bad at everything, you'll be bad at your job, too.
Yeah, naturally.
But, you know, the one thing I'm kind of okay at, I'm pretty good at playing StarCraft.
Okay.
So at least I have one qualification for this job.
Yeah, that's not too bad. So why didn't you qualify for this tournament, AxSlav?
Well, you know, I'm busy doing other things. This tournament would have been really a little bit too easy. And it was one of those things where it's like, you know, I gotta let these unknown players, you know, these ladder warriors
You're
get a win
already
here or
top
there.
of the tier.
Yeah.
You have nothing more to gain and nothing more to prove from this tournament. So, you know.
That's right.
Yeah, that's how it is, folks. That's a fact. If you heard it at the caster desk, you know it's true. Right, okay.
No
so
lies here.
No, we would never do that to you. Never. So, let's talk a little bit about the format. Best of 7 to finish us off, always the best way to do it. Could have done best of 13, but these guys like that might be for a little bit too long. And Blizzard's saying, you can't overrun WCS. Like, oh, okay. But we're going to have a best of 7. It's going to be in a 5-map pool, as the tournament has always done. That means no vetoes, and it also means map refresh. So there's a coin flip to start that will determine who picks the first map. After that, it's loser picks. Once you have exhausted the map pool, the entire map pool becomes available again, which means that if you get to game 6 or 7, pretty much anything can happen. It's very, very hard to actually plan for that point because your opponent is able to break out any map, and they're able to break out the map that they're strongest on. They can bust out a unique strategy, and as a direct result, I think that's actually why we saw such a close series between Gosu User and Kane. Simply because of that, the comeback began, and then as the map sort of got thrown at him, everything changed up completely. So it's pretty cool. All of the pros believed that a smaller map pool was best. So we went with what the pros thought. You know, it's their tournament after all, so it makes the most sense. But these guys are playing for a grand prize of $4,000. Second place is $2,000. Not too bad. You know, you come to New York City, you get accommodation, you get tips, a little bit of fame. You get to see the glorious skyline of New York, and you get to walk away with $2,000. But $4,000, well, that's a different matter entirely. That's double the money. You definitely want to be taking that.
$4,000 could buy you a really fun night in New York City. Let me tell you that.
That it can, yeah. Or like 1.5 taxi rides.
Get you back to the airport, and then you realize you forgot your bag, so we can take you back both ways yet again. So of course, they're also fighting for that trophy as well. Not just the money.
Indeed, they are fighting for the trophy, which is guaranteed to push their hand luggage allowance above the maximum tolerance. So that's something that they're going to have to deal with. It's a little bit of a challenge going forward into this particular tournament. That tournament, it doesn't actually weigh as much as it appears, honestly. It's the kind of thing that it looks like it would weigh an absolute ton, but since it's got so many holes in it, actually not a big deal.
So, do we know what the first map is going to be played?
Well, we will be finding out very, very shortly. We're just doing the coin flip right now, and we will determine exactly who gets to pick the first map. And that's going to determine a lot of things, honestly. You know, you can very much see what kind of tempo the player wants to set based on their first map pick.
One thing I'm interested in is seeing what type of PvE style State uses. Because all through this term, we haven't seen him yet play a PvZ.
No, he hasn't. Oh, it's going to be Neoplanet S as the first map here. All right, so we're going to get aggressive from the outset there. Neoplanet S, just a little bit of a statistic, the least played map in this tournament so far. It was, for the most part, vetoed during the best of 3 group stage, and it usually ended up being the last map of the best of 5 if it had to get to that point. Most players don't want to play on Neoplanet S unless they are a highly aggressive player. Taking the third is very, very difficult to do. Zerg players avoided it unless they'd planned some kind of 2-base all-in build. So I'm intrigued to see why exactly Neoplanet S would have been picked first.
As far as PvZ goes, from what I've seen, Zergs really like to do the 2-base Ultraless tech on Neoplanet S.
Yes.
And Protoss is typically almost always do a 2-base all-in.
Yes.
Although the Zerg's teching, then they might decide to take a third. But if a Zerg plays a more standard build, Protoss will go for that 2-base timing. And that is State's strong suit. At least in Wings of Liberty, he was a 2-base timing base player.
Exactly. It's hard to assess from the tournament so far because, as you said, he has not played against any actual Zerg players. He's been doing PvPs and PvTs up to this point. But he's been playing very macro-focused builds against Terran, like 3 to 4 base builds, really, really strong. But as you said, in Wings of Liberty, he did a lot of 2-base in this matchup. It is State's choice as well, so it seems fairly accurate that he wants to do a big, powerful 2-base build to start him off, shut Kane down immediately, and get that map advantage.
We'll see if he can use that to take the tempo. Of course, Kane will probably knows what's going to happen on Neoplanet S. So does he have some ZVP counter build up his sleeve to deal with this? We'll have to,
Well, Kane has the advantage of having a team and a lot of good Protoss players. Minigun now being knocked out of the tournament by State, no doubt wants revenge. They didn't have much time to prepare, but they did have about a day before they flew out to this. So there is the possibility that as a result of that, Kane has prepared some specific builds. State, on the other hand, of course, doesn't have a team. He's sponsored by Gamefront, as you can see by the t-shirt there. That's a personal sponsorship. And that's, it's great that he can get that personal sponsorship, but without team support, you don't necessarily have the practice partners you need to really prepare properly for a tournament like this.
In fact, I was actually watching these guys were setting up and practicing at these very stations for the last couple hours here. And Kane was actually playing against Minigun in his practice game.
Yeah,
so hopefully they were trying to figure out some secret anti-State way of playing to catch State off guard. Of course, like you mentioned, though, Minigun, he lost 0-4 to State in the semifinals. Yeah. So he definitely has a little bit of a wounded pride there and definitely wants Kane to take revenge for him.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And I think that when you have a tournament where you've had 5 Root players and 4 of them get knocked out, yeah, you pretty much have a situation where by proxy, all the other Root players want to win for their team, especially since they had such a high showing. I mean, if you get a situation where Root has, so many players in the lineup and they don't win the tournament, then it's a little bit embarrassing. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was a massive hurt to the honor or anything, but in that situation, you've got the edge, and you really, really want to make it work to make sure that your players get through. And yeah, all credit to them. Minigun got really far. He got to the round of 4. Kane gets to the final. So it's not like Root didn't get representation. They most assuredly did. In fact, they got 3 players through to the round of 8.
One thing that is interesting as well, actually, is the fact that State, I think it was the only player in this tournament that wasn't on a team when he first joined. Or maybe one of only 2.
There were actually, I think, about 4 players.
Okay.
Yeah, there was almost an entire group full of them, actually. Group D was Complexity versus a bunch of teamless guys. We had RSVP, who's not on the team. These guys, previously have been on teams. I mean, State, of course, used to be on Vile, used to be on Quantic. Not on that anymore. Then you had Hello Kitty, who is not on a team. He used to be on Pulse, if I recall correctly, not anymore. And then you had one of the players, Xenocider, who is not on a team yet. Upcoming 15 or 16-year-old. 15-year-old. And he played well, man. He's a real Terran talent, I've got to say. He played extremely well. He trounced RSVP. He, unfortunately, was not able to handle QXE's Terran versus Terran. But it worked out pretty well for him. And I think he impressed a lot of people. So we did have a few teamless players, and that's the cool thing about inviting from ladder ranks, as far as I'm concerned. You can have that happen.
It's definitely possible, and that's almost a great way for a player to get noticed. I mean, if State does win this tournament, or even if he gets second place, it's going to be a really big move for him. Just pretty much saying that, okay, I'm this good. I don't need a team. Now you guys can all pay me money because I've proven that I'm the best player in WCS America.
Yeah, certainly. That's a big deal indeed. And we will be going to the game momentarily. As you're probably aware, Battle.net and GameHop particularly have had some invite problems over the tournament. I think anyone that watched the tournament pretty much knows that that's the case. And as a direct result, I believe we did actually lose you, so we may have to reset up the lobby, unfortunately.
It's all good. I mean, we have the program. So as long as everyone else can make it happen.
Well, let me put it this way. We're going to be putting a big giant Smurf through his spaces today. He's going to be our dedicated observer for today. So that was the sound of simultaneously every viewer celebrating. They don't have to watch my terrible observing. So we will rely upon him for this, and we will see how it goes. We are in the second lobby right now, folks. As you can see, the versus screen is running. That means we will be getting into this game momentarily. It will be ROOTKane playing Zerg and State playing Protoss. State will not, in fact, be picking RGN as his team. That would be very, very odd indeed. He is, in fact, teamless. We've got Kane in the blue and State in the red. They will be keeping those colors throughout the tournament. I will not be allowing them to change. You know how I get when you as a caster know this. Players randomly change their colors just to annoy you, and it's incredibly annoying.
It's of course the most frustrating if it's a mirror matchup.
Oh, good lord! It's like, who was this guy? Oh, the Protoss is here, the other Protoss is here, and there's some fighting going on. And yeah, that's really annoying. And I'm also convinced that the Koreans have a conspiracy against tournaments to randomly change the colors just to annoy the person in control of the scoreboard. I'm pretty sure that's confirmed.
It's definitely part of the master plan there. It's how they send secret messages past us and secretly tell your opponent exactly what's going on so they can make the most entertaining game possible.
That's
of course,
absolutely true.
the game is now started. It's going to be Neo Planet S. So this map, like we mentioned before, very focused on 2-base play in pretty much every single matchup.
Yes, indeed it is. And here we are, folks. We are on Neo Planet S, and I don't want to say anything because I might end up cursing the tournament. That seems like the last thing that I should be doing right now. But we're here. It's working. Everything's cool. So welcome, welcome to the Southwest position, ladies and gentlemen. Your first grand finalist for ShoutCraft America in the red trunks, playing Protoss. His name is State. Versus his opponent. To the northeast position, from Team Root, in the blue trunks, playing Zerg with the sassiest overlord you will ever see in your life. Look at that swagger. That's genuine swagger. He doesn't care. He's not got that special skin on. He doesn't need it. He's got the confidence. His name is ROOTKane.
And Kane did sound very confident in that pre-game interview, so of course confidence carries over to all of his minions, knowing that their leader is confident in victory. They can go and do their missions with a little bit of more of a swagger.
Indeed.
State going for the pylon outside his base.
Okay.
So more likely going to be a Forge or a Nexus first,
Yep.
as opposed to a Gateway expansion.
Yep, I would even on a map like this, I'd still see State going Nexus before Forge. Like, that's a possibility. Kane has not really been busting out the super aggressive openings in this tournament at all. So, honestly, unless you get a 10 pull from the Zerg, which you're not going to see, he's clearly going to go hatch first here, then you will actually be totally fine to put your Nexus down. And State, you can look. I mean, look at his minimals. He's clearly going to do that. So we're going to see a nice standard slow opening from both of these guys, just feeling each other out as they try and figure out where to go with this series.
I find it kind of interesting that State didn't scout with the probe after building that first pylon. Of course, if you do that, then you can block that hatchery first build.
Yes.
It forces Zerg to get the spawn pull first and kind of delay their opening a bit. When you open with a Gateway expansion, you usually lose that ability because with the Gateway expansion, you need to get minerals even faster because your Nexus is already delayed.
Yes.
So it's very important to delay the scout just a little bit longer. But with the Nexus first opening, it's usually involves a faster scout to spot, like you said earlier, spawning pool or to block the hatchery. But State says, I don't need it. I know exactly how he's going to play. I'll just play a pure macro opening.
Yeah. This is the State that we've been seeing this entire tournament in pretty much all matchups. He's generally not that aggressive at the start. Obviously, we haven't seen him against Zerg, so it's really hard to say what he's planning on doing here, but this seems like pretty standard State from the start. I wouldn't expect him to bust out anything crazy to begin with. He is the player that I would consider to be the most solid this tournament. Like, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He doesn't pull off these really flashy, stylish, risky plays. Aside from his Oracle coin flip against Hello Kitty, or no, actually against QXC, which ended up being a dreadful idea, he has played rock solid this entire tournament.
That's been a trademark of State's play for quite a long time now. He's the guy who prefers to play a game where it's all about fundamental mechanics, and that's why he likes those timing attacks. If you play timing attack style, it's just about, okay, how many units can I get by the 9-minute mark versus you, and then can I control those units better than you can? And it's just basic, solid fundamentals, and that's the exact gameplay that State loves.
Yeah, he does, and he plays so well like that. Kane, on the other hand, aggressive, very, very aggressive into the mid-game, and then just never stops doing that. Plays a lot of Ling Ultra, obviously not necessarily the style you want to be playing in versus P right now. I mean, there's so many different ways to deal with it. If you end up in a situation where your opponent's got too many Colossus or too many Immortals, or both, you basically get trounced. Adding Storm into that composition, the Ultra Tech doesn't really work out so well. You often see players still electing for the older style of Broodlord in this matchup, assuming that their opponent doesn't have a decent air presence. That can still work really, really well. But things are pretty mixed up, I think, in CVP. We're seeing a lot of emphasis on air. Sky Toss is difficult to deal with. We're seeing Zerg respond with a very slow, grindy defensive style, using a lot of Swarm Hosts, a lot of Spore Crawlers, getting Vipers, Corruptors, and sometimes getting a lot of Muters as well. And speaking of that Stargate play, the first one is now out from State. He has begun building that. Now, this could really mean anything. If we see, though, he does have 4 gas, which indicates to me, unless he's going to do some weird coin flip, which, again, I don't expect an Oracle out of him at this stage, we're probably going to see a Void Ray.
One thing that it also means is we see no +1 weapons.
Yep.
The 4 gas before additional gateways means he's not going to go for any type of Zealot plus air unit aggression to try to deny the third base.
Yeah.
What he's going to do is probably get the robotics facility very, very soon after that Stargate. There's plenty of gas so he can afford both the air tech units and getting a jump start on that robotech.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, we're going to start with the Phoenix. Now, I would be really interested to see if he does go to that. He could still play it, as you said. He could go the way that you mentioned there, where he goes for heavy tech behind it, and he can still pump the Phoenixes out at a decent rate. I mean, you know, 4 gas is too much for that, but it does let you get sentries out, it lets you get tech, it lets you start building things, but I would be interested to see whether or not he decides to go for any kind of heavy ground presence, bearing in mind, as you mentioned, that he doesn't have any upgrades started yet.
I'm really curious to see if he's going to take a third base or go for some type of late 2-base timing. This type of opening where you get the Phoenixes and you get the Robotech and you go Sentry Heavy usually caters towards taking the third base once you have about 5 to 6 units on the ground there. Maybe once your first observer gets out in the field. But like we mentioned before, State, you know, historically really likes the 2-base attacks, but the fact he's still building probes at this point in the game means he probably wants to mix it up here in Neoplanet S.
Yeah, interesting place to really want to take a third base. You know, it's so exposed, so difficult to deal with. We're seeing Hydralisks and Spore Crawlers coming out. Nice choice of the Spore Crawler, but people should, of course, bear in mind that while they heard, oh, Spore Crawler's been buffed, not against Protoss, it hasn't. It's of no use whatsoever there, and honestly, a single Spore Crawler is not the kind of thing that's going to deny sustained harassment on a mineral line for that long. Phoenixes are surprisingly tough, and they also do a really good job of just getting out of range because of that superior speed and maneuverability. So if you want to jump out of there, no problem whatsoever. It's really, really easy to avoid dying to spores. +1 range, we're going to see Hydra Tech coming out right here. We've also got Link Speed on the way as well, and there is the Colossus Tech coming out here from State. Hydra Speed coming on, so we will see some aggressive play.
It's going to be interesting is how well can Kane deny State's third base. Of course, a Protoss going for Colossi is going to have a more cost-efficient combination than the Zerg who's building Hydra. So it's all about the Zerg maintaining an economic advantage, which means slowing down and delaying the Protoss third for as long as possible.
Yeah, you see the couple of links going down at exactly the right timing there. Kane certainly knows what his opponent's going to do. The question is, can he stop it? Hydra Speed is not done yet, which means these guys right here, they're in a position where they could be picked off. He's going to watch out for that. They're probably not going to... Well, actually, they should reach the third before the first Colossus comes out. So this strike could very well work out. It depends really how effective the force fields are. Yeah, State's going to have a look. He should see that coming in. So he knows that his opponent is posturing. He needs to be in the right position. I'm actually kind of surprised. I was going to say he's not going to go home, surely. That would be the wrong move. He needs to put himself in a position where he can effectively engage. Looks like Kane wants to wait until Hydra Speed and +1 complete.
I think that's a smart move. I mean, State has more Zealots than there are Hydras out right now, plus he has the 4 Phoenixes as well. So if Kane tried to push him with this army, decent force field and the Zealot Phoenixes would tear this Hydra's force apart.
There's also a Time Warp available as well, and it looks like the Nexus... If the Nexus completes, of course, there'll be a photon overcharge, but I'd imagine Kane wants to strike before that happens and try and force a cancel, because that would be pretty huge, but I think he's going to have the time to do it. The engagement comes in, the Time Warp comes down as well. Phoenix is basically all lift, which is the best thing they can do. The Colossus gets a really bad engagement, though the Zealots are in a terrible spot. Most of them are actually forced towards the back here. There are, I think, enough lifts to clean this up, though, without too much of a problem. So, with the double Time Warp, losing all the Phoenixes, not exactly the most efficient engagement he could take, but he secured his third base.
He definitely secured that third. Losing the Colossus and all the Phoenix is a pretty big blow. I mean, that was the battle where he probably could have won it much more efficiently, given the fact his army was so much larger than Kane's. But not really able to utilize the damage output of the Phoenix there.
I love that. Like, a big muta switch after that kind of engagement, absolutely the right thing to do. If you know your opponent's Zealot heavy, if you know your opponent's investing a lot in Colossus Tech, and you just killed all of his Phoenixes, 50 mutas is going to do a lot. There'll be 2 Phoenixes up on the map by this point, but there are no Blink Stalkers. In fact, his Stalker count actually is at precisely nothing. So this is a great time to strike with this.
Oh, State, this is the moment when the Protoss has to be suspicious when the Zerg pressures, and then all of a sudden you see nothing from them for half a minute to a minute. Is he... Oh, he has resumed Phoenix production, so that's going to help him just a little bit.
Second Stargate coming down, actually, for that, but the 2 Phoenixes is not enough to deal with 15 Mutalisks by any stretch of the imagination. The Colossus is going to go down. This is a beautiful pick-off right here. You're looking to get the engagement, and that Phoenix got caught off as well. Mothership Core goes down. No photon overcharge is going to be available here.
Some good micro by State, though, keeping those 3 Phoenixes alive for now. If he can just defend for long enough to get a large air force, he's going to be in pretty good shape going forward. But of course, that's going to take him about 2 more minutes in the game to get that count up, and that's a very dangerous 2 minutes for State.
Yeah, with double Stargate coming down behind that, he'll have 3 Stargates. He'll probably want to transition to Sky Toss, but he's not started any upgrades for it yet. And the upgrade advantage is clearly in the favor of the Zerg player, who now has full map control. No Fleet Beacon coming down for Pulse Crystals. And I don't blame him. Like, if the Zerg player decides, oh, you're getting Pulse Crystals? All right, I'll just stop building Mutalisks then. Enjoy that investment.
Kane's coming in here pressuring, but State has so many units on the ground with the Guardian Shield and Stalkers to support them. The Phoenix can push away those Mutas. He's actually going on the aggression now. No, he's going to back up just a little bit. All those Zealots are something he wants to find a way to utilize. So he wants to find an engagement when he can deal with the Mutalisks and let the Zealots kill the Zerg while the Zerg doesn't have much forces on the ground.
Absolutely. I don't know if he'll be able to do that, though, honestly. The Zerg is very much capable of just surging out units when need be. Upgrades are looking really good for Kane as well. +2 air started. Phoenix is caught out. That was a nice pick-off right there. The Mutas get 2. State not quite quick enough to react to that. Nice wall off to prevent the ground attacks. A lot of cannons going down here as well, which, you know, sounds good in theory, but it does mean that Protoss army is going to be smaller.
That's right. Of course, he's spending all his gas on that air tech. Has a little bit extra minerals. And at this point, he decided not to go for a giant timing, saying, you know what? I don't need more Zealots right now. Let's solidify the defense first. And then we'll, you know, once I have air control, I'll try to figure out how I want to approach the game from that point onward.
Interesting place to take it. We've got a 5th base coming down right here. Another engagement comes in with the Mutas. However, State is able to get on top of that. About 5 or 6 Phoenixes on the field, 7 now, in fact, and the air weapons coming in. This is the kind of time when things get a little bit difficult, but if you keep the Mutalisks mixed in with the Corruptors, it's very difficult to properly target fire units down. And if you're target firing, it's much easier to mic with a Mutalisk away, because you can very clearly see who's being shot at any given time. So it's a pretty powerful force coming in right here. He is engaging against a lot of cannons and Phoenixes, though. I don't like this decision. He's taking quite a bit of damage, but the Ling Run by is certainly going to do something, and he takes the 3rd base out as well. And, oh, the Phoenix is just caught out a little bit there. Not a bad strike, I've got to say. Taking out the 3rd base, trading a few Lings and a Muta or 2 for that, yeah, that's worth it.
This might spur a counterattack from State, knowing his opponent used a lot of those speedings. And State, of course, currently at an economic disadvantage, but he may have a military advantage, at least on the ground.
Yes, indeed. He's got 17 Stalkers, 24 Zealots. They're not that well upgraded, if I'm totally frank. He has been upgrading from a single forge this entire time, which is definitely not State style. He really does love the double forge play where possible, but in this case, he hasn't really been able to do it. He's been spending his gas elsewhere. Blink is on the way. A good Ling attack comes in here, trying to kind of wrap around. There's way too many Mutalisks for that force. I have no idea, but it's not going to be helping today. The Phoenix is trying to pick it off, doing a pretty nice job. He was actually, it looks like he was swinging around to the north there, and his force got split up and isolated. Kane in a great spot at this stage.
Oh man, State, he cannot afford to have his army split up like that. Kane will just jump on half of it and take it out. Then he'll take out the other half right after that. The Phoenix have all been taken out by the Corruptors. The Colossus is going to go down next.
There's the GG. First in this best of 7 series goes to ROOTKane. Nice convincing start, I've got to say, by Kane, which is surprising considering, you know, it's State's map choice. I wonder what State's overall game plan was there. You were talking about the idea that he made 2 base, but he was clearly posturing for a 3rd, looking to get Colossus tech, then he's forced to adapt his style. He says, oh no, the Mutalisk switch. I wasn't ready for that. I lost all my Phoenixes. I need 2 more Stargates, which means I can't go to double Robo production. I can't get the upgrades out. The Zerg was slightly ahead in that respect. And I don't have Templar tech. Perhaps the most important thing. No Archons, no Templar. You cannot kill off Mutalisks fast enough when you're facing a Muta Corruptor force. If it's pure Muta, maybe, just maybe, you're able to kite for a while. Yeah? Maybe you can kite and you can take the Mutas down eventually. But you lose half your army in the process. You need that AoE.
That's right, either AoE or going to full Sky Toss with Fleet Beacon and adding in some Void Rays as well.
Yeah.
Then you might be able to take it, but State was trying to keep a dominant ground army to potentially knock out Kane's bases, but then he didn't really, you never found an opportunity to use that high Zealot count. There was a large chunk of the game where he had about, 15 to 20 Zealots just kind of hanging around in front, and the speedings are way too fast. They just ran right past and sniped that Nexus.
Yeah, that was a really nice run by, actually. I was surprised that he was able to take the Nexus out. I feel that, of course, there could been a possibility to sort of wall it off a little bit more, but the Speedlings got right in while the army was trying to engage the Skyball from the Zerg. And then the Speedlings were basically what did the damage there to kill that Nexus off. Did a great job of that. Yeah, he loses some Speedlings, but taking the third out is totally worth it, especially when you already have a fully operational fourth, and your fifth is on the way in the corner, which, you know, State wasn't really even able to go across the map. Even with the Phoenixes, he wasn't really able to harass. The Hydras came out, he saw that, he got into a defensive spot, says, I've got to hold my third, I've got to hold my third. If I can do that, I'll be in a great position. And then suddenly, bam, you get this engagement here, which was really, really nice. Yeah, it was able to deny the attack on the third base. It was an efficient engagement. He lost the Colossus and the Phoenixes, which is a bit unfortunate, but the Spire is already on the way. Yeah, this was never meant to be a big committal to Hydralisk.
That's right, and if the Hydralisk can take out the Colossus and the Phoenixes, that's huge.
Yeah.
Right there, you know, ideally the force fields are behind the Hydras, so the Zealots come in there, and then the Phoenix can pick off Hydras one at a time and use their damage output. But with the Zealots unable to connect to the Hydras and the Phoenix not attacking them either, they stayed alive for a very long time and were able to kill a lot of the critical units of State.
Yeah, they absolutely did. Kane played a really dominant Zerg vs. Protoss there. State just didn't look like he was able to deal with it. You know, yeah, okay, cool first engagement. That's cool, but, I mean, losing your Colossus, not good. But if you don't have extended thermal lance in that situation, you're pretty much going to struggle to keep it alive anyway, if you wanted to contribute to the fight in some way. But the response was really good. State wasn't prepared for it. He tries to react the best he can, but unfortunately, it simply was not enough. So, Kane looking dominant. Of course, we'll be going into the next map once State has taken a break. He is a couple of minutes to collect himself. That is generally the way of things when you have to deal with an early loss there. You know, State has not been in a live tournament setting for quite some time. Neither is Kane, admittedly. You know, this is actually Kane's first time in a really big city like this, so it's pretty crazy. Hopefully he's not scared of heights.
He was mentioning, actually, it was really crazy for him to be in New York. He comes from a city, I think he said 40,000 people. So coming to New York, one of the biggest cities in the world, has got to be kind of a shock there.
Yeah.
Just make sure he looks straight at the monitor, don't turn around.
Yeah, don't turn around, otherwise it's like, oh God, why? Why are we up so high? We're not birds. This is ridiculous. We'll be going to a quick break, folks. I just want to do that before Kane starts singing, because the last thing you want to do is have to endure that. We'll do our best to avoid that in this broadcast. That would basically be the nail in the coffin of this tournament. We will be right back. You are watching ShoutCraft America, brought to you by TotalBiscuit and AxSlav, the MLG studios in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to ShoutCraft America, and we are going into Game 2 very shortly. It's going to be on Akalon Wastes, that of course being State's choice, and they are competing for the silliest looking trophy ever made, which is of course the reason they came here. The money is not a factor to them. It's all about the pride, and it's all about that Spiral Starry Freedom branch.
Who doesn't love freedom?
I don't think there's anyone here. Maybe Kane. I mean, he's from Canada. Maybe he doesn't love freedom.
They only, like, kind of half love freedom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it took them a long time to free their country.
It's like, yeah, definitely. You know, they freed themselves from the tyranny of the Huns sometime in 1792. But after that, yeah, they're kind of ambivalent about it. They're okay with it, though. I'm not saying they hate it or anything.
No. I mean, Canadians are pretty ambivalent about most things in life.
Yeah, very apologetic as well, I tend to find. It's like they have freedom, but they feel guilty about it. Kane's going to punch me in the face after this tournament, and you know what? I'll take it with pride. All right, so State obviously taking a couple of minutes there, taking a bit of an early loss considering it was his map choice. It seems very odd to pick Neo Planet for the very reason that we just saw there. Like, taking that third and actually holding it and stopping Lynx from just destroying it, or at least gutting it, is very, very difficult to do, and that's why you see a lot of Protoss play the two-base style there, but no, State wanted to play a macro game, didn't get the opportunity to do it. Now we're going to Akalon Waste, a map where it's much easier to do so.
That's right. I mean, if he's wanting to play the basically mass air / Colossi late game style, Akalon Waste is probably one of the best maps in this map. Well, definitely better than Neoplanet S for that style.
Yeah.
So we'll see. You know, if Neoplanet S comes back up, maybe in Game 6 or 7, are we going to see him do a different style on it? We'll have to wait and see if that might happen. But next map, like you mentioned, Akalon Waste. This is a map where a lot of Zergs use Swarm Host play.
Yes, that they do. Good map for it as well. I mean, you can put yourself in a situation where there are 3 different bases that you can push towards if you have control of the center of the map. The pivot is very, very easy to do as well. You got plenty of retreat paths, in fact. It's really good. It's exactly where you want to be as far as I'm concerned. So we might see that from Kane. I'll be intrigued to see whether or not he pulls that off. State, on the other hand, I think is going to feel a little bit more comfortable here.
One thing I think we're probably going to see is State, of course, playing that macro style. And then it's going to be on to Kane. Should I play that Swarm Host that, you know, a lot of Zergs like on this map? Or, you know what? Last game, the mild Hydra pressure into a mass Mutas transition is really strong. And one subtle thing he did about that build is he got +1 range weapons, which almost all Zergs, when they do that build, they don't get that because they know they're going to transition to Zerglings later anyway.
Yeah.
But when State sees that upgrade, he's going to freak out and think it's more Roach Hydra or maybe even Swarm Host pressure and not anticipate the Muta transition.
Yeah, exactly. Which means that, like, for a while you can use Colossus there. Once it reaches Hive Tech and Vipers come on the field, generally speaking, you don't want to be using a lot of that because, well, yoink, yoink, yoink. Because we saw yesterday in WCS, build Colossus, Vipers come on the field, you might as well just say goodbye to your Colossus. And it's very unfortunate to do that. In that kind of situation, you need to be thinking about Templar, you need to be thinking about feedbacks, the Storm. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. We are here on Acheron Wastes. This is State's map choice. And he is to the southeast position in the Red Trunks playing Protoss versus his opponent to the northwest position for Team Root. Currently up 1 game in this best of 7 series of the Blue Trunks. It is Kane. I said the big... we should have given him red, then we could call him the Big Red Monster. But I have a feeling that World Wrestling Entertainment Corporation might sue us for that, so let's not do that. All I'm saying is that the McMahons are known to aggressively protect their trademarks. Let's not do that. But Kane is actually a monster, man. He's so scary.
He is.
Not in real life. Like, he's a little bear.
Not quite as big as that.
No. It's like, ROOTKane! 5'2", Canadian. Hi! No, he's not like that. But it's not... You know, it would have been nice to see him entering the ring in a horse mask and a cape, but that wasn't really the case. Pretty sure Kane never wore a horse mask. I don't know. Maybe that was on the Comedy Central special. But in this case, we do actually have a pull first here for Kane.
This is kind of a smart play if you don't know exactly how your opponent opened. The hatchery first is typically better, except under 2 circumstances. 1 being you get cannon rushed.
Yeah.
And then 2 being if your opponent blocks you from building the hatchery first, and then you're stuck there with 300 minerals. You have to build your pool, but your pool's even later than it normally would be, and then you can't even kill any pylons that are blocking you for quite a long time because you don't have any Zerglings for quite a long time. So,
not great. Not really an ideal situation to be in there, but... Seen the pool come out, but no gas, so we won't be seeing any early game aggression. A couple of lanes will come out just to defend. It's just going to pump out queens, most likely. We may see a more queen-heavy approach here. Good map to do it on as well. You can, if you push that creep forward towards the first Selnaga watchtower, you have a great range. You can come in from 2 sides on the 3rd base, the one that's separated by the rocks, and also you can put one to the west there at the 9 o'clock position. And both times you can very easily respond to aggression to both of those areas, so that's always nice to see. We've got a cannon coming down in a defensive position here for State, so won't really see too much out of him in the next few minutes. That's going to be a dead probe, which is always nice for Kane. Nice little bonus for him right there. But I'm intrigued to see if State decides to go for the Phoenix play again. There are, of course, a couple of builds that you can really do to get out of this Forge and Nexus kind of play. Things vary up a little bit with Heart of the Swarm. What do you reckon? If you're in this situation versus a Zerg player, especially considering what happened to you in the first map, what kind of build would you be going for here?
On Acheron Waste, I would pretty much choose between either taking a very fast 3rd base or doing very similar to the ability to last game, maybe taking the 3rd tiny bit faster just because of the map. But the Phoenixes are a great option. You can pretty much always get damage done with them. Like you mentioned before, even if your opponent has a Spore Crawler, that just means you can't kill the Queen. But you can still pick off drones and run away before you take any more than shield damage. So I really do like that Phoenix opening. It's such a versatile opening for getting into a macro game because you constant skying throughout the game. You're already, a little bit of the way towards countering the Mutatech path. Yeah. And it just makes it a little bit easier to play the game and you know exactly what the Zerg player is doing.
That's certainly true. And we'll see if he decides to go for that. The gas count for State is starting to rise. He has, of course, 2 gas. He may take his 4th quite quickly. We're looking at Warpgate Tech coming down right here as well. This is still not indicative of a tech path as of yet. It's quite interesting that we don't actually see all 4 gases going down here. No upgrade either yet, so maybe he just waits for a sentry and then picks his tech path. In the meantime, we see a 3rd base, of course, down for Kane. There's the 2 gas coming down for State. So let's see where he wants to go with it. There we go. There's the Stargate.
Oh, the Overlord is right
Pretty
there.
close, yeah.
I don't think it's quite envisioned quite yet. Oh, wait, no,
it is. Oh, man, that's actually a big mistake there by State, allowing that to happen. There's all sorts of places that you can put it where you're clearly under no risk whatsoever of it being seen. putting it right there. I mean, if I didn't know better, I'd almost say State did it on purpose, but he doesn't know that that Overlord's in that position. That said, on a map like this, he should be able to anticipate that.
It's kind of tricky. I mean, there's a couple places Zergs sometimes send their Overlords. Some of them like to have one more towards the front of the natural, or there's almost always one in the back of the natural. So putting villains in a natural isn't quite as advised on this map, but yeah, the bottom left of the main is a really interesting place. I think it's just the way he had his pylons located was like either had to put in his natural or put it there, because he built that pylon at the bottom left to help spot for, you know, a potential like Nidus player or Mutalist coming in later in the game. And then he's all of a sudden realized he wants to build a Stargate. He's like, where do I put it? I don't have any pylons on the bottom right of my main where you really ideally put that Stargate.
Yeah, you know, you've got to plan that stuff out in advance. We're going to see Phoenix play here once again, straight into the Robo. So pretty similar build from him, but this is a better map to do it on. Already working down the rocks, and of course you have that option towards the 3 o'clock position as well. You can use the Phoenix to pick off that Overlord. He can probably go find the other one and then curse his luck at that regard. There you go. He sees that. It's like, oh, do you know my Stargate's there? When did you see it? And we've got the same response actually coming in from Kane. I think he's a little bit later on the speed this time around, but it's pretty much an identical build from him otherwise. There's the Hydra Den, there's the +1, the 3 Spore Crawlers going down. We might see exactly the same transition, and if we do, then State might be in a lot of trouble. These Phoenixes didn't do that much damage, or really any, to the economy of Kane in the previous game, aside from picking up an Overlord or two.
Not quite as much as he wanted to get done.
Yeah.
You know, what Kane's doing is Kane's putting a few more Spore Crawlers than some Zergs normally put down. We see there's actually 2 Spores in the 3rd base.
Yeah.
And with those Spores positioned that way, the Phoenixes can't really pick off the drones in the 3rd base. Of course, they can still go into the main or the natural and pick off like the one of the drones mining gas at the main, or pop in a natural and try to do the same thing there. But coming into those angles makes it a little more difficult to get in there and getting damage done.
Well, that Zergling just got a wonderful experience the last few
the
seconds
Zell
of
can
its
get
life.
squished.
Yeah, that can happen. Have you ever seen that happen in a pro game?
It has. Well, no, I don't think I have.
No, it would be
I've
hilarious.
Had it happen to me, but
it will happen at some point, and when it does, I will laugh so much, and it will be a great thing. But yes, those rocks can kill anything that they land on, so you want to watch out for that. Here come the Hydralisks. Slightly longer rush distance on this map, though, not by much. The Phoenixes do see them coming in. Got to be careful not to... You must group them up, because 5 Hydras could actually be engaged effectively by these Phoenixes.
Notice how State is leaving the rocks with like 1 hit point
left. Oh,
what
man,
if the Hydras run through there?
Oh,
and then he kills the rocks?
Yeah, there we go. He's collapsed to himself. I was going to say, if he actually ran his Hydras under that and they fell down, like, he should just leave the game right there in embarrassment. That would be the stupidest thing ever. It's like, what is this, Dungeon Keeper? You can't lay traps like that. That's ridiculous. But right here is the engagement to deny the 3rd base. This is a nastier position to go into, but there is no Colossus on the field as of yet. I have to wonder if Kane will simply not do that. Oh, difference. He's not going to go for Heavy Spire by the looks of it. We've got Roach and +2 ranged coming in. It's a fake. The +2 Stargates are coming in. You see there's 2 more Stargates being added on? I don't think he's going to go for Muta Heavy at all here. He's building Roaches, he's building +2. He built the Spire, but he could just maybe build some Corruptors out of it instead of Mutalisks.
Could easily go that Corruptor path. Of course, the one thing
he's only +1 on those, so maybe he does.
I'm a little bit worried about the fact that he's going Roach, Hydra, Corruptor without Hive Tech, because without Vipers, it's so difficult to be cost efficient against good force field usage.
Yeah.
The Protoss is the force fields well, the units just kind of all die, and of course, if State goes Void Rays and not Phoenixes, the Corruptors aren't going to be of much value either.
No, they're not. Someone said that they were a hard counter to Void Rays. They were completely mistaken. They absolutely are not, as we saw yesterday in WCS. So, mind games going on, which, this has been the tournament for that, because these guys play each other on the map all the time, consistently. But Void Ray's coming out right now, and I think State smells this. In fact, does he have an observer over there? Let's check that. Let's see if State actually saw. What does he know? Does he know about the Spire? He actually doesn't, does he? Interesting that he would go Void Ray right now.
You could have seen a Roach. If you see a Roach with the Roach speed upgrade, that pretty much gives away there's not a Muta transition.
Yes, that would be very, very weird indeed. So, Void Rays, this is a good composition here for State, actually. Colossus count, yeah, it's not that huge. I mean, it's still a lot of units on the field here for Kane, so it's pretty hard to call either way. Kane's also pretty much maxed as well, so if an engagement happens right now before the Void Ray count gets to a critical mass, then we could see some serious damage being inflicted.
State really just wants to hide back, stay defensive, because once he maxes out, Kane's army just can't touch a max Protoss army with Void Rays and Sentries.
Yeah.
That's why Kane wants an engagement right now, but on Akalon Waste, it's so hard to force your way in. You're either going through a tiny choke by the third or a ramp by the natural, and neither one can you really set up that great concave of Roaches and Hydralisks.
No, you can't. And now the Void Ray count's starting to get scary, so I think if Kane wants to hit him, he's got to hit him now, and he's got to do serious damage with this. His entire army could get crushed here. He's going to try and cancel that upgrade, that's always nice, but now he fights in the Time Warps. The Corruptors come in from the flank. They kill one Colossus already. Killing the second one would be great here. Force Field only now come down. The Colossus comes down as well, so the thing is, this is not a good engagement here for Kane. He is fighting up that ramp. The Void Rays are now in effect. The Roaches are crushed. The Time Warp really prevented a good arc there, and there is the defense from State. Very, very solid indeed. Now he's going for the Mutalisk transition. He did kill a number of Phoenixes, so this might work.
This is the moment where, as a Protoss player, you have to be so diligent in scouting. Anytime after a battle against Zerg, you really can't know what they're going to remax on. So, you know, Hallucination Scout, being assertive with the Phoenixes, these are all things that are essential to just seeing, okay, just run across the map. Are more Roaches crossing the map or not? That's usually the biggest thing. They can tell you what's going on. And unfortunately, State doesn't know about these mutas, and there's a giant force of them massing at the bottom left-hand side of this map.
Yeah, this is really unfortunate, honestly. I'm kind of surprised at State. He's only got one observer. State is one of the most ridiculously diligent observer players I've ever seen. Like, he'll be like 4 observers. He's only got 1, which is really surprising. I guess he's just dedicating all of his robo production in here, and here come the Mutalisks, and he does not have an answer to this.
No, he doesn't. Of course, in a few minutes, he can rebuild enough Phoenixes to deal with them. The Stalkers and Void Rays can handle Zerg army in a straight-on engagement, but with the mobility, the Mutas can keep him penned up for quite a while. In fact, his whole army's reacting to the right side, and now Kane is going for the third base, similar to what we saw last game.
That is a really nice adaptation of this strategy, honestly. He is playing some great mind games with his opponent, forcing out a lot of Void Rays, then going for the Muta transition. And of course, charged Void Rays do nothing against Mutalisks. Mutas can very easily get out of range. They are more than capable of handling that. That run-by was defended really well by State, honestly, but there's still 29 workers that have been killed by Kane. Now, there's only so much you can really do with that many Mutalisks just picking off the economy, and Kane is looking very strong here. State's army's getting picked to pieces as well.
State needs to find a way to stabilize his 3 bases, rebuild his probe count, and then get a significant anti-air force out on the field.
Yeah, and if he doesn't get that, then he's in a lot of trouble. I mean, with that many mutas, you really can't go Phoenix, and there's no way he's going to be able to get out enough Phoenixes to handle that. He really has to think about Storm and Templar tech, but we see no Archons, we see no Templar Archives down. And I think it's going to now end up being a base trade scenario. You can't keep chasing that muta pack all over the place while Kane gets upgrades and gets pretty much everything he could possibly desire. Takes like 50 bases. It's a really terrible idea. And the Forge was never rebuilt, so the +2 never came in for the ground army, which means even if you engage on the ground, he's still going to lose. Oh, it's going to be a dead base by the looks of it here. State's been pulled out of position. This Nexus is taking a pounding now.
That's the last thing State wanted. He's trying to stabilize his economy. Speeding's coming and say, no sirree, no third base for you. Even the main is being under fire here as well as more Speeding's pouring. And every single hole that was opened up by the meter harass is now being deepened by the Speeding run-bys.
Yeah, this is looking really bad for State. I don't see a way out of this for him. He's down to 25 probes. He doesn't even have a good enough standing ground army to really fight against what his opponent's got. He doesn't even have a supply advantage anymore. Like, really, if I was going to do this, I would have tried to base trade maybe 5 minutes ago, just because trying to stabilize against this is really, really hard to do. His Phoenix count is not at that big critical mass it needs to be. Even with 8 or 9 Phoenixes, 28 Mutalisks could still catch you out. And here comes the push across the map here. It's a pretty strong army here by State, but even if he kills the first army of Kane, Kane's got a bank to get some more units out. He's got a Stalk-heavy army, which means it's very, very open to Lings, especially if he loses that Colossus. Now there's the run-by into the natural expansion. The units are gutted here. State needs to go right now, unless, he's already pretty much out of the game, but for any chance to actually get back into this, he must go and attack right now.
But one thing State can do is his army doesn't really have an answer by Kane at this moment. The Void Rays with Prismatic Alignment will just crush through anything Kane can rally out. What he needs to do is he needs to pick off all the Mutas with his Phoenix Force. Unfortunately, that hasn't quite happened. There's Corruptors now supporting the Mutas. His Phoenix haven't been able to pick off all those units. If he was able to kill the Mutas, he could have turned this game around very easily, because then all of a sudden his opponent's mobility isn't absolutely destroying him.
Yeah, so that's the base dead for State. So what his army that he has right now, doesn't matter. State GG's, and there we go. There is the second game. Kane looking pretty good right now, honestly. Really, really positive going into this. Very, very strong build as well. You know, we say it's the same idea, the same transitions, but a bit of a variance on the build. Mind gaming his opponent into going heavy Void Ray, then suddenly the Muta switch comes in, and I think that we're going to have to see different builds here from State. Otherwise, Kane's going to keep doing this unless we see maybe earlier Templar tech, unless we see an emphasis there, or unless he's just able to do real damage early on in the game. State is just going to be up against a 4-base Zerg with all the gas you could ever need, able to switch between techs, doesn't even have to go Hive.
That's right. If you're playing a Zerg who's willing to do these mass tech switches, you have to be so diligent in scouting as a Protoss player. I mean, with 3 Stargates, if you scout the Mutas as they're spawning, you can get pretty much 6 Phoenix produced by the time they cross the map.
Yes.
That can hold the initial wave, and then as you rally more and get the range in, you can stabilize. The problem comes when the Mutas show up.
Yeah.
And all your probes die instantly because you have no idea they're out there.
Exactly, yeah. And it's really weird to see State not being diligent with scouting when he's done it throughout this entire tournament. Maybe he's a little bit nervous, could be a bit tired, but you can see just how much damage this can do. It'll hit that probe line and just like one-shot probes. Even the glaive bounce does it as well. There's the cancellation on the 4th base. The Ling run by comes to the natural and the 3rd. It smashes that down as well. The static defense is nowhere near enough. The army's pulled out of position, and as you're well aware, those big Protoss Deathball armies are only good when they're together.
That's right. It's very hard as a Protoss you have to instantly split your army into 2 factions. Say, okay, this many units is the right amount to be able to meet this, and you chase the units with that. And then the rest, okay, I need to make sure there's no speeding run-bys happening. I think State, even after the Mutas kind of caught him a bit off guard, if he was able to defend his 3rd base, he probably would have been in a good shape. He had a giant army. He just needed to defend those speeding run-bys. Those pretty much took him out of the game because he had his whole army chasing the Mutalis, not back to defend those the speeding Roach Hydrotus Force on the other side of the map.
Very true. State's going to have to think about this. Can he do anything to deal with this style? Well, the obvious solution would be to switch up builds. Let's see if he decides to do that. The next map is going to be Belshir Vestige, as chosen by State. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, Game 3 of Kane versus State. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to ShoutCraft America. Game 3 is coming in right here on Belshir Vestige. We're setting that one up right now. And Kane is looking really dominant with this build, but anything can change. And I need to see a different style from State, I think. This style has clearly been figured out and studied. And I think that is blindingly obvious. We already knew, of course, that Kane was practicing with minigun before this. I think those guys have figured out State's style in this matchup, and as a direct result, State needs to show a different build. That's right. He needs to,
Either mix up the builds or be much, much more diligent with constantly scouting Kane and knowing exactly what he's up to. The Phoenixes have to be out on the map. There's a reason Phoenix are the fastest team in the game, and so they can always be out there without risking their lives, being able to retreat once they see what their opponent's doing. So he has to figure out when Kane is doing these transitions and not get so caught off guard by them.
Yes, he absolutely does. And how do you do that? You scout. You know what you're doing. Where are the hallucinated Phoenixes? I mean, even if you have Phoenix control, real Phoenixes, if you're not using them, and if you're not using them to scout, then there's no point in you really having them. I like the approach by Kane to actually go for that defense-heavy play with the Spores, because that seems to be scaring State a little bit. And the thing is that a part of using Phoenixes like that in an aggressive posture is to get the scouting information while you're doing the harassment as well. So if you don't do either of those things, there's really not a huge reason for you to have the Phoenixes to begin with. So at that point, you might as well either hallucinate or get more than one observer out. But it seems like his Colossus timing precludes him from getting more than one observer. What do you reckon?
One thing he's been doing is he's been adding 3 gateways before the robotics.
Yeah.
Which is very rare for a defensive Protoss, because typically you only add the gateways before the robotics if you want to put on some like +1 Zell pressures or something, in addition with the early Phoenixes. If you just want to play a defensive tech-heavy style, there's no reason not to get that robo immediately after, and that'll give you more time. You can crank out 2-3 observers a little bit faster. Perhaps State's had bad experiences with all-ins in the past.
Very much a possibility, but Kane is exploiting that style very well. So, let's introduce our players here on Belshir Vestige. If you've just tuned in, welcome. We're already seeing a different opening here from State, so this is going to get exciting. He is in the red trunks to the northwest position, sponsored by Gamefront. Versus his opponent to the southeast position. Currently have 2 games in his best of 7 series. In the blue trunks for Team Root, he is Kane.
The Gateway expansion is definitely a great way, like you said, changing up the strategies. All the opening timings will be different. So Kane has kind of this rhythm built up. Okay, I need to get, Lair at this time, then Hydra Stand at this time, Zergling speed, I have X drones, I can make, Y Hydras, and then I still have a lot of money left over to expand and transition later. He's going to have to all of a sudden realize, okay, wait a minute. Warp Gate is going to be coming out much faster, which means all of a sudden there could be, warped zealots attacking me. I can't drone up as much, and it just throws off the whole cadence of the game a bit. I'm sure Kane has played many games against Gateway expansions, but his 2 most recent ones have been against the Forge expand, so his mindset has to be quickly adapted in his 3rd game.
Yes, it does. Yes, it really, really does. And I would love to see an aggressive State. I really, really would. All sorts of opportunities here, I feel, to really make things work. We see no expansion down yet, of course. He already has a second... Is that a second Zealot on the way? Yes. He's already getting 2 Zealots out. Warp Gate Tech going straight in. Still no expansion here for State. So, let's see. He's got to be aggressive in some way. But how is he going to do it?
We'll have to see. Just several Zealots before Nexus isn't a particularly common way to play the Gateway expand. So that kind of means I feel like he wants to move out, maybe do an attack with a recall or something in just a little bit.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, especially if you have a sentry involved at home, so that you can just force field the ramp if the counterattack comes in. I think, yeah, you could get a couple of Zealots out and you could do something with it. It's kind of strange that we're not seeing that yet with the Mothership core out. Let's see if he decides to go across the map here.
He's going to wait for the sentry. Is that going to go with the attack? Is it going to stay at home?
Yeah, but the problem is if it goes with the attack, then he has no way to really stop a small link counter-attack into his main. But there is a second sentry coming out here. Now, those 2 Zealots are going to get spotted, and Kane's going to be thinking, hang on a second. At this stage in the game, you should not have that. So why is it that you've got it? I wonder, again, if State's trying to mind game Kane in this sense to force Kane to build some defenses, but that's not happening right now. And to be fair, even with a couple of Zealots out, you just surge Speedlings and eliminate that.
It's kind of one of those things where the Zerg doesn't really have to start defending until the Protoss actually is moving out across the map. So right now we can see State's at this watchtower, and now he's getting a few extra Zerglings. The Queens are instrumental in defending this attack. Typically what Protoss wants to do is, ideally for Protoss, the Zealots maybe combined with a Time Warp can take out the Queens, then the Mothership Core has free reign on the drones. But if the Zerg can get the Zerglings out in front of the Queens, macro them away from the Zealots, take out those Zealots first, then of course the Mothership on its own, if there's still Queens around, is not going to do too much.
There are 3 more gateways coming out, and I'm looking to see if there's actually a close-by proxy pylon here. There's the probe. So how close is he going to put this? How aggressive does he want to go? That's been spotted by the Overlord there, but he's moved out of position now. The Lings are now moving into position. Oh, if those Lings got to find the probe here. Oh, no, they're not. They missed it.
Oh, that's so important. With these early gateway pressures, you really need to proxy pylon. It just takes too long to walk Zealots across the map. Your opponent can almost always have the appropriate defensive. If he can get a proxy pylon up, he can most likely force 1 cancel on that 3rd hatchery.
Yeah.
And that actually is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's what he was looking to do here. He menaces on the map to bring a lot of Zerglings out to delay everything. But he's still going to attack. He's just not going to throw everything at it. You'll notice that the vast majority of his units are actually at home here. Now, that will have been spotted by Kane. And the attempted run by gets completely shut out. But now he's going to move out with all of the sentries here as well. So there's going to be a warp, and a second pylon comes down. He is going to hit that 3rd base, and he's going to hit it bloody hard. And quite frankly, I don't see it being defended.
Kane definitely needs to make those roaches right now. Zealot Sentry is so cost-efficient against Zerglings. If your opponent doesn't have roaches and your force fields are good, you can almost always just plow right through pretty much an infinite number of space.
He's going pure Ling here. He spent all of his lava on Lings, which is not going to work at all against Zealot Sentry. Now 1 roach comes out, but he went Lair Tech before that as well, which meant that he had no gas. So he can't defend this, surely.
He's going to have to bring enough Queens out to the front there to hold this attack. There's a little bit of a glitch there.
Yes, we lost the Observer, so that could be a bit of a problem. I believe the Obs just ended up leaving the game there. So what will probably happen is we should be able to resume. I'm hoping. Are we good?
I think the Obs is back.
Okay, cool. Set. Yeah, it looked like we'd lost him there, but okay, we just have a quick pause. Okay, we are pretty much about ready to go again, so we'll just have these guys get back in.
So the one thing it's really going to come down to is a lot of it's going to be about the Queen usage. Of course, the Queens have the ability with 5 range to shoot over forest fields. On creep, they're faster than both Zealots and Sentries, so they can kind of slowly pick away at the Protoss army and get the Zealots and Sentries to move in ways that expose them to Speedlings.
Okay, here it comes. A couple of queens there. Freak spread's made its way there. Great force fields already, actually, to force them around in that direction. It's going to need a couple more, though. The surround comes in. Ooh, that was so close. He's going to end up losing sentries here. This attack is now actually ending up anywhere near as good as it should have been. The sentries were panic force fields more so than anything else. And
there's no recall either.
No, there isn't. That was a disaster. That should not have happened that way. And Kane shuts that down by no right. He had no right to defend that third base. Not with those units.
It's one of those situations where, you know, maybe the Hatcher could live, but he would have had to lose many speedlings wearing down the force fields. But because State was caught with the sentries all in the open, he had to use 5 or 6 force fields in a situation where ideally your units are positioned so with just 1 or 2 force fields you can really mitigate the surface area that the speedlings have to attack you. And now, of course, without those sentries, it's going to be very difficult for State to move out on the map and have enough control to actually even take a third Nexus.
Yeah, it certainly is. That was... man, it seemed like a good idea. It was the right thing to do. I don't think it was a bad build. It's just, he had a really bad engagement. It was poor execution. And as a result, you end up in a situation where that third goes up, which is not what you want to have happen. All right, so we're now seeing Blink coming in, and we're going to see +2 here. We may end up... I have to wonder if he's even going to expand here, if we're actually going to see just a later big Blink hole in. It's a possibility, I suppose, but surely he's got to expand here. What do you think?
His build was definitely looking like he originally wanted to expand. I mean, he went up to 52 probes, which is much more than you'd want with a 2-base Blink stock roll in.
There we go, he's going 3.
There we go. Nexus is going down, and I'm really curious to see how he's going to try to defend against any type of Roach Hydra speeding pressure without a lot of force fields. I mean, that's the counter to Roach Hydra is force fields plus anything, but State doesn't have those force fields.
Well, we are seeing much better Phoenix harassment this game, I've got to say, and that's forced the Hydras out. Hydra range coming in this time for the more defensive Hydra play rather than Hydra speed. What I like about State this game is he's dictating the pace of it, not Kane, which is what Kane was able to do in the first 2. And as a result, he was able to basically force his opponent to do transitions at certain times, then counter transition in a way that would have made sense. But with Kane being on the back foot here and having to defend and having to respond to the attacks and the harassment of his opponent, that gives State that edge. And the Phoenix has already managed to pick off a Queen, which is great. He needs to pick off a couple more, I think, to really make it work. But these upgrades are later for Kane this time around, and Blink's going to be done as well.
One thing that's interesting is after Kane held off that attack, he had total map control for the next several minutes. He never droned up, really. His drone count is not high by any means, so he's committed himself to killing the third base of State, or he's going to give up any lead he had earlier in this game. Building all these units this early on means that he wants to get damage done, or else it's just kind of silly to have much less drones than he could have had.
Well, he can do damage. I mean, it's Roach Hydra Ling versus a Gateway army. He's droning up heavily behind this, so he is just being aggressive as much as he can here. Blink will help, as will the Phoenixes, but he needs sentries, so he's warping them in. He really needs Area of Effect. He's got to have Colossus or Templar, and he's nowhere near that. He delayed that tech so much. He's only just built his Robo.
Blink Stalker Sentry on the ramp is forcing Kane back. Kane not confident enough to engage here. Saying, you know what, if I charge up the ramp and you hit the force fields well, I'm just going to lose.
Die.
A third of the army could die for nothing if the Blinks are good as well. State is going to be just playing purely defensively until those Colossi get up. So this is, Kane's time, or actually State, no, he's going to move out on the map. Does he have a recall? Okay, he has a recall with him, so he should be okay. If Kane picks a good fight, hits a strong flank, State can just recall out of there.
Yeah, certainly. He's got to make sure that his units are bunched up for that as well. Thankfully, there are no infestors on the map, so there's no real disadvantage in doing that. A couple of Queens picked off here. That's always nice. And not only are you slowing down the creep spread, but you will be slowing down those injectors. There are not enough Queens on the map to efficiently inject. Ling Runby is going to hit the third base here, and it's actually just been pushed away. Oh, he recalls the... That's interesting. I think that's a win for Kane, if I'm honest. He forced his entire army to recall.
Definitely a nice win for Kane. Otherwise would have had to force the recall by attacking and losing some units to force fields before State would have recalled back. In this case, I mean, it's not like State made a mistake recalling because he lost everything to the speedings and then lost the game. So he had to recall. But it was a great move by Kane, knowing that the third base would be little exposed when State's army is out on the map.
Yes. However, there is still enough energy for a second recall. So if Kane was hoping that State would stay across his side of the map for a couple more minutes, he was gravely mistaken. Observer, and in fact, an Overseer is going to get picked off here. Phoenix is still in play. Big Stalker-heavy army. But here's the thing. Kane doesn't actually have that many Lings to effectively engage against it. He is, upgrades-wise, just working on 1-1 here. The Colossus are on the way out. Nice little dart in. Another recall comes in to try and handle this. The Mutalisk will, of course, get out. Nice. Oh, nice blink coming in right there. But he doesn't actually kill anything. Workers lost only a couple. But it does give that control and allow a potential run by onto the third here.
This is a very tough spot for State to be in, of course. From here on out, Kane's going to focus mostly on counterattacks using Speedlings and Mutalisk. And without any fast units, it's difficult for Protoss to deal with that. You know, in other games, if he was able to scout Mutalisk, he could build a lot of Phoenixes. But this game, even though he knows there's Mutalisk, Blink Starkers are great defending, but it is pretty hard to actually move out of the map.
Yeah, very much so. Force fields go down. Nicely done. Good blinks coming in right here by State, who is able to, of course, get the Colossus in play as well. So that cleans up the Lings way, way faster than it should. Big lifts on the Hydralisks as well. Like to see that, but he doesn't quite come in in the right kind of time, and takes a huge amount of damage to that. Mutalisk swing around the backstab there. Already 22 workers killed by that. And, you know, this is the problem that State's currently having. If you can't handle this, then every time you move out on the map, you're going to lose an entire base worth of probes.
Stalkers coming back to defend a natural. Mutalisk flying away, but they're just going to go right back to the main and kill a few more units there. Turning around to try to take a couple shots at those Phoenixes. And State even lost his Cybernex course. He's having to rebuild that. He's in a very, very rough spot because, yes, his army, he has a stronger army. And in any type of direct confrontation, a little bit of sloppiness from Kane there, getting a lot of damage on those mutas.
I'll tell you what Kane did as well, which is super sneaky. He recognized that his opponent was going really Stalker heavy with Blink. He kills the Cyber Core. So it... Never mind, he did kill the Cyber Core. That's a second Cyber Core coming down. I was going to say, hang on a second, really?
I assumed it would die.
Yeah, it's a backup Cyber Core. You know, there's two reasons to do that. Unless you could do a full Sky Toss transition off a double Cyber Core, or alternatively, you just build a spare to make sure that it doesn't get sniped when you're playing really Stalk heavy. 42 Stalkers on the map. Here's the thing, like, it might look like Kane's in a great spot, but he doesn't have a ground army. Like, barely any at all. And with the Colossus on the field not being picked off, Lings are not going to work here. Like, State could actually just kill Kane right now, and he realizes that. He's like, no more of your tricks. Time to really get down to business.
Of course, State realized he was in a base trade situation, or it was going to come down to a base trade.
And there's the GG. And that's it. Yeah, shut down. And State realizes, there it is. He realizes the approach there. It's like, oh, you're going to be annoying? You're going to pick at me? You're going to pick at me? I've got 42 Blink Stalkers with massive upgrades, 2 Colossus. I'm going to come and slap your base down. And that's exactly what he did, and that was the right call to make. And State puts himself back on the board with that. It's interesting because I don't think his opening actually really helped him to get there. I mean, what do you reckon? If we were to just go back to the start of that game and just really analyze how it went down. He opens up Gateway, he puts an aggressive stance, and he does basically nothing with it. He gets a really bad engagement, loses all of his sentries, and then has to go back into a different kind of game pace. And yet he's still able to force Kane into certain scenarios where he has the upper hand.
Well, there's really 2 big factors, I think. One is that Kane did the exact same thing right after that. He actually cut drones at I think it was 58 to 60, which is a very, very low amount for a Zerg trying to play a 3-base Protoss. So he was really killing a lot of his own economy to do this massive Roach Hydra attack. But then instead of committing to the Roach Hydra attack, he said he started to do it, then he realized it might not work. And so he backed away and then tried to re-drone and transition, but basically he lost any advantage he had from the opening by not really droning up.
Yes.
And then, of course, when he had the Mutalisk position, he miscontrolled them a bit and lost like 5 or 6 meters on the left side. And then they got forced backwards, which meant that he couldn't counterattack.
Yeah.
And like we saw, when we did go for the base trade, he wasn't even able to attack State until State was already entirely across the map. And that was just because the mutas weren't positioned to immediately counterattack as soon as State left his base. And State seized that opportunity, said, okay, I've got a 30-second window to cross the map. Let's just jump right on it and take him out.
Yeah, it was the right call. The last thing he wanted to do was keep defending and get picked apart and allow his opponent to rebuild the ground army. And maybe even tech transition, go to Hive. Like, that would have been horrible if that had actually happened. But no, he did the right thing. He made the right call, goes in, puts one on the board, and suddenly the game changes very much so. Kane has lost his momentum going into this. The builds have changed. The strategies have changed. Kane's sudden confidence in that Skyzerg style isn't working for him anymore.
So this is something that, you know, how much was it because his whole tempo was thrown off by the beginning? Yes, that attack from State really failed, but it hit at a time that Kane cut his drones earlier.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe he thought he was in a position that he was in other games. He's like, okay, I got 3 bases, I can go, Roach Hydra transition to Muta. But what he didn't realize is because he slaughtered that attack, he had cut a lot of drones earlier, and he wasn't really in the same position he was in the first 2 games. So
yeah, exactly. He didn't have that tempo or the control of the game pace.
Yeah.
And when State's dictating that pace, then Kane's got to react to it. And unless he's in control, he struggles a lot more. You know, he doesn't have this mental edge that he had over his opponent in game 1 and 2, where he clearly prepared that strategy, and Minigun and Puck and everyone else that ended up getting knocked out of the tournament, especially by State, was looking for vengeance and said, this is how you kill him. This is how you kill him. And then that comes in, and it's like, well, you're not going to be stopping that. No chance at all. You know, it was that kind of attack, 42 Stalkers. You know, he almost had more Stalkers than the opponents had Lings. There's no way he's making that work.
Not a position you want to be in as a Zerg.
No.
If you're facing that many Stalkers with meterless speedling, you have to use the counterattacks, but he just wasn't in position to do that counterattack as they moved out across the map.
Absolutely true. All right, things are starting to get interesting. No 4-0 sweep for you, Kane. Let's see if he can make it 3-1. Going to a break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, what is that giant needle in the background? It's pretty damn scary, isn't it? Hopefully it doesn't intimidate Kane. But he did take a loss there, and that showed more of the State style, the controlled style that we're used to seeing from him. The kind of jumpiness from him is not what we've come to expect. And now I'm interested to see where this goes. Do we see on Kane's map choice, which will be Whirlwind, a big map, does State revert back to that Nexus Forge style? You can play Phoenix on this map. It's not a bad map for it, but it's a big map. And I'm interested to see if he's going to open Gateway again.
This is a map where the vast majority of Protoss choose to go the mass target type of play, just because it's so big, and having the air control and the mobility is a very important aspect of playing on Whirlwind. So I think we're going to see State either go for a Stargate play, or he's going to do some crazy type of gateway attack. I don't see him playing like he did last game with a Blink Stalker type opening, because if trying to fight in the middle of a map of Blink Stalkers is just such an open area. Your opponent can get very good concaves. Force fields are significantly weaker in mid-map battles on Whirlwind than they would be on, for example, Belshire Vestige, where it's tons of chokes and ramps.
Yes. Very, very true. All right, we're going to be going into Whirlwind right here. This will be Game 4 of the ShoutCraft Grand Finals. Big map to do it on as well. We have so far seen very low-tech games from these players, relatively speaking. It's hard to ever call a Protoss low-tech because they can often just very much rush up to Colossus and get stuff like that. It's like, oh, look, high-tech units. But we haven't seen a single Hive from State this entire game. He's been relying very much on Mutaling and Corruptor for the most part. And then the one game where he builds a lot of roaches, well, you know, it doesn't really help him all that much. It was really good when he was able to trick his opponent, yeah? But this time around, more expected, more prepared State. So, without further ado, we have to the northwest position in the blue trunks, representing Team Root Gaming. He is Kane versus his opponents to the southwest position. Takes a map back. Let's see if he can get that momentum and get himself back into a good frame of mind. In the red trunks, representing Gamefront. Playing Protoss, he is State.
State's first pylon inside his main base. So not going to go for that pylon at the front gate. Okay. Looks like he's about to build a gateway too. There it goes down. So going for that gateway, you know, he's like, okay, 2 games I went for the Nexus first and I lost those 2.
Yeah.
The next time I went gateway expand and I won. So obviously, 100% win ratio with gateway expand. It's clearly.
Yeah, it's just like Hello Kitty. When he builds a Nexus, he wins.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a fact. You can't argue with statistics, man. But unfortunately, correlation does not equal causation. So hopefully State is aware of that. This is an interesting map to go gateway on. If he wants to have a leisurely jog across Whirlwind with Zealots this time around, or even wants to kind of pressure, unless he can get a proxy pylon down, which, you know, that's the thing you can consider on this map. There's an upside and a downside to having a long rush distance, yeah? The downside is, if you want to pressure early with Zealots, good luck. By the time you get across the map, you're going to be seen coming miles away.
Could be rocking into Ultratus.
Yeah, there could be Ultra Tech by the time you get into the base with 2 Zealots. That would be disastrous. Generally, Zealots don't do all that well against Ultras. But the plus side is the Overlord coverage covers less of the map, which means a proxy pylon is easier to bring into play. And as soon as the proxy pylon comes down, rush distance suddenly is meaningless.
And that's something we actually saw yesterday in WCS with Alicia versus Sen.
Yes.
Alicia was able to kill Sen's third base and roll in just 5 zelts. Just coming out of nowhere because of those proxy pylons. And that's something he was able to consistently do on every map. So far, State hasn't quite had the same success. I mean, he did get that the proxy pylons up on Belshire, but his attack was still stopped.
Yes, it was shut down fairly hard there. Now, we do have a single zealot. He's even building a second one here as well. I'm really surprised to see the double zealot style coming into play here. I mean, it's such a big map there. There's no probe on the map as of yet. There are links coming out. There's not a lot of them, though. So controlling the map here for Kane is going to be very difficult to do. But Kane, of course, Kane now knows about, at least he will in a second, he knows about that expansion coming down here. He's going to think, all right, well, that's a little bit light. I wouldn't be surprised to actually see a couple more lings out here from Kane going forward, just because that map control is so important. Actually, did he even spot the Zealot? I don't think he went that far up the ramp.
He might not have, but 2 Zealots, really, they're kind of slow. So even if you don't have enough Zerglings to take on the Zealots, Zerglings are faster, so you can just run circles around them all day. And then, of course, you have so much time to react as they cross the map. It's really... at least for me as a Protoss player, I find it hard to justify spending 200 minerals before you get the Nexus on these Zealots unless you can actually get something done with them. And for State, it's like part of his timing. Whereas most players just say, you know what, I'll just warp in all my Zealots. I'll just, not get anything early and wait for the warp gate tech to come in.
Yeah, State's super consistent when it comes to build orders, I've noticed. Like, we noticed almost all the time when he was playing PvP, he always built double forge at a very specific time mid-game. Every time. He's very practiced. His build orders are very fluid. They are very well constructed. So that could be a plus because it's very hard to rattle you. But it can also be a disadvantage because on maps like this, those 2 Zealots, I mean, this aggression surely is not going to do that much. I mean, Kane would have to slip up in a big way to allow for anything to happen here.
Well, there's a probe at the top right section of the map hiding and ninja this way across the map.
Yep.
If this guy builds pylons, they went 4 gateways before Stargate. So we can warp in a lot of units. The Roach Warren is only about 1/4 of the way done. More speedings are in production. State doesn't really have a super close proxy pylon, though, so that's something that's a little bit worrisome. I mean, he can warp in 4 Zealots, but then it's still going to take him about another 15 seconds to actually get to the 3rd base of Kane's, and Kane saw all those gateways coming up, I believe. So,
and he gets us around. Oh, there's the recall. The recall. Obviously, he didn't want to use that. He really did not. There is a Stargate coming down behind this, and he warps in sentries, and they're just there. Like, he isn't able to attack with it. So I'm really surprised to see his decision to warp in sentries right there, because that is a huge amount of gas that is now sitting very, very vulnerable in a really awkward spot on the map.
It looked like he was planning to do another Zealot sentry time. If you get something like, 4 or 5 Zealots, 4 or 5 sentries, you can often take down a 3rd base. But when we had to recall back, he's like, okay, if I have to recall back, should I continually warp in units there? Maybe not. So he's not even using these 4 gateways he had built. He's instead just going back to cranking out probes and, of course, producing those target units.
Oh, man. We're going to have to see State pull an Argo if he wants to get those sentries out of there, man. He's going to have to fake that he's building some kind of great movie set. He's going to go investigate. He's going to go basically to apply for a filming permit on Char, and then he's going to have to convince the border guard that it's going to happen, and then only then can he smuggle those sentries out. But I don't think he's going to be able to do that. And, having 2 sentries at this stage in the game in the wrong place on the map is actually kind of a big deal.
It is. And Kane is a clever enough Zerg. I mean, maybe they can sneak along the right side of the map. But, in fact, actually, I don't even think Kane has any idea they're out there. So.
No, he doesn't have a clue. But the problem is, like, State doesn't know that. State has no idea. So, that...
He's about to have a recall on this Mothership Core.
Yep.
And he's going to meet up with his small force. Kane could be caught a little off guard because he sees 4 Zealots and 2 sentries crossing the map.
It's actually 4 Zealots and 4 sentries because they... if he, there's no way he planned this, but this could be a very happy accident here for State if he manages to execute this properly.
There's a lot of Protoss units coming up here. What does Kane have to defend? Of course, the Phoenix can also intercept some of the units as they're between the bases.
All right, we're going to have to see good force fields. They're not too bad, actually. Some good lifts coming in here as well, and the focus fire comes down. The Zealots are, for the most part, halfway there, but some links spawn and actually get around, which means, and there is the recall coming in. and he doesn't kill the third base. He does recall and get out with his sentries, which is more like save for the last engagement, but he wanted to kill that third, and he didn't get the chance to do it. But we're now seeing a different build from State. We are seeing an Immortal coming in.
State's continuing to make probes, but he's going for Blink Stalkers, upgrades, and Immortals. So this usually indicates that he wants to do some type of aggressive 3-base play.
Yeah.
He's going to expand, but because he hasn't really got any tech behind this, he could be looking to do, just build up a lot of units off 3 bases, then go in for another attack.
Kane forces to cancel. Always nice to see. It wasn't that built anyway, but it's still annoying. Obviously, you'll lose 100 minimals out of it and plenty of building time. Also buys some time for Kane to get upgrades going. He is looking for speed on the Hydras, which indicates to me he wants to be aggressive with them.
Getting roach speed.
Down behind it.
Roach speed as well. So Kane's going to be looking to definitely... But then he gets Aspire as well. So this is almost... I'm a little bit worried for Kane. This is similar to what we saw last game, where he stays low econ, only 62 drones, not up to the 75-80 that Zerg normally wants if a Protoss is going to be on 3 bases and Zerg doesn't have super high tech or anything. So he's going to want to deny the third, but he's also spreading his tech out in so many directions, getting 1-1 on the melee, getting Aspire. So he's going to transition to muteless speed lean after some aggression, but his kind of economy boost, his drone up is a little bit delayed. So in this very similar position to last game, if these Roach Hydras can't get anything done, it's going to be a little bit awkward to utilize them in the mid game.
Yeah, and bear in mind that this time around, this aggression is potentially even worse. A nice little, I told you the pylon would eventually come into play, so that was nicely done. Obviously, that's going to force a couple of units back. He could actually get some drones here, but the Lings are now back there. I mean, that warping in itself has a purpose because it forces the army of Kane back. It gives security to that third base, and that's always good for the Protoss to have. But we're in a position now where that Roach Hydra Ling force is not going to do that well because there's so many sentries that lived through the initial aggression versus previously. There's going to be so much energy available, plenty of force fields. It would be dangerous to upgrade. However, we should point out, because of the Immortal tech coming down and no Colossus tech, this is a different engagement entirely.
Trying to keep State on the back foot is Kane, putting on a little bit of aggression. He doesn't want to engage them because he pointed out the sentries are there, there's Blink Stalkers. State's army is significantly stronger, but if Kane can keep the army out in the middle, keep it distracted, the Mulis will have such a big opening if they sneak into one of the back of State's middle lines.
Yes, indeed. It looks good for State right now, but what does he gain from it? Blinks under that, lifts up a couple of units here and there. Good use of the Phoenixes. They've been super useful this game so far, picking the army apart, but the Muta count is up. Warp Prison play coming in.
Nice little Warp Prison move by State. State's pushing out his pylon, has spotted those Mulis and didn't quite skirt the field. Now they're into the base. He's trying to warp into single Stalker.
Not gonna work.
Yeah.
He's got a few Phoenixes. Like, if he micros these well, then he may be able to minimize the damage. There's not quite the number of mutas to overwhelm that yet, but he's actually going to recall. Okay, that's probably the smart play, to be fair. Like, oh, he loses some tech there. That's unfortunate.
Not a situation he really wanted to base trade in.
No.
He would have lost a third base as well to the Roach Hydra force and probably the main. And of course, the Zerg could have hatcheries all over the map. But now he's going to pursue the force, and this is where, Kane has a lot of supply, but a lot of it's in the Roach Hydra force.
Yes.
And we saw last game, when the Roach Hydras got obliterated, there weren't enough Mutalisks to really force that base trade on their own.
Yeah, and right now, State is trying to put himself in a position where he forces a fight. The Immortal
beautiful
took it.
time warp.
Yeah, that was really nice. That Immortal is like saved by the time warp. Great Blink coming in as well, dealing a lot of damage. Those Lings got cut in half quite quickly there. This is looking still pretty nice for State. Kane has a supply advantage, but a lot of that is, of course, in Roaches. Again, another good engagement to pick off Muta. I saw what he tried to do there. He tried to blink across the chasm. Didn't quite work out, but...
Two of them made it.
I'm not entirely sure why that Stalker's still alive, but no, I was going to say they're going to release it in a hostage exchange. I don't think that's going to happen, but right now we see the Mutalist count has got scary. And this is bad, because he doesn't have enough AoE. Again, he refuses to go Templar tech, so... He can engage it with the amount of Blink Stalkers he's got, but he has to play defensively right now, which gives Kane opportunities to establish. And he's on 5 bases right now. He could go Hive, he could get his tech up. Not a good engagement there with the Phoenixes, losing 2.
What State's doing, though, is he's split up his army with just enough to defend Immuno Harass back in the natural. And his main force is moving out on the main attack. So Kane either has to fully commit and break the portion of State's forces that are defending the natural, or he has to somehow defend State's frontal attack.
Yeah, and honestly, like, Kane's army is not as scary as it looks. He's trying to force his way through here. Good Blink Micro coming in here as well. More Warpins to reinforce. The Lings are starting to overrun that Stalker count. State's actually not moving forward on the main army here, and there are not enough Blink Stalkers to kill this, even with fantastic control, but it is enough to scare Kane backwards, and now the big attack comes in with the power punch of those 3 Immortals.
Oh man, there's no amount of defense that Kane has that can stop this. Everything he has is on that counterattack.
Pop goes the hatchery.
Now State, of course, is going to go straight to the natural. He needs to take out all of Kane's key bases. But as long as they can defend the speed attack, he's going to be in good shape. He's warping in more and more units. A few speedings rallying here. But really, when you're doing a base race with the mutas, you need a lot of speedings. The mutas poke a hole in the wall, the speedings run in and take out the stalkers. And Kane doesn't have quite enough speedings. He's been able to clear up these stalkers, but meanwhile, his natural's pretty much dead.
Yeah, he's lost so much. It's actually ridiculous. Like, he's down to 32 drones. He loses most of his main hatcheries. Like, he's really holding on by the virtue of having 2 more bases. I believe he's building another spawning pool here as well. Yeah, he is, because he knows that his spawning pool is going to be a prime target here. Not the most efficient engagement by State here either. Both going into these weird base trade situations. The Spire goes down, and these Immortals, of course, will just wreck the main. So really, what does Kane have going for him? He's got this muta count of 25, which is pretty good. He can still base trade because he still has 2 bases.
Well, this is in a situation now where State, his defending Stalker force was taken out.
Yeah, it's dead.
He has to send these Stalkers back home, but this is a situation almost always favors the Zerg. State continually warping in Stalkers, but they're dying. He's fighting with 1 or 2 Stalkers at a time, so his Stalker count isn't growing. You need a lot of Stalkers if you're trying to use this style.
Yeah, he's actually only got 17. That's not enough to kill that army.
No, and the problem he has now is that maybe the Stalkers can defend, but meanwhile, he's already lost all his probes, and the mutas are going to just go back and kill all his forces that are killing Kane's bases, and then Kane will be happy to play out a game where he's got, you know, a little bit of an economic advantage.
Yeah, totally. It's 18 to 12 right now.
Is he just going to kill all the Stalkers?
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't he? He's got the numbers for it. You can't. No amount of micro is going to save you from there, and there's the GG, and a scrappy game from both players results in Kane taking a 3-1 lead there. And I'm going to be completely honest here. I think this, especially in this game where no Colossus was built, I think this unwillingness to go for some kind of area of effect, whether it be Archon or Templar, is really hurting State here. Because once you... Protoss have been struggling with this for a while, right? Once you get a lot of Mutalisks on the field, Blink Stalker is not a counter to that anymore. There's not enough. The damage per second is not high enough. The Stalkers die too quickly. Combine them with Lings, they die even faster. You need something that can damage all of the Mutalisks, not just 1 or 2.
This is something that's definitely true as the game goes late. Of course, they tried to mitigate this by going for that base trade situation and splitting his forces up.
Mid-game, yeah.
And that can work, but you have to make sure your walls are solid, because when the speedings just poured into his natural, he lost about 10 Stalkers, 4 speedings in that one engagement. Yeah. And then he didn't have enough Stalkers to defend against Simulas. If he was able to keep his wall solid, you know, a full wall off, have a sentry on defense as well, then all of a sudden it would have been a situation where Kane has to break the natural, but Kane can't break the natural if there's enough stack defense there, if there's enough sentries along with the Stalkers to defend. So it's a very tricky situation. You either, like you said, need to get the AoE to play the later game, or you have to be absolutely sure that you can both defend and attack at the exact same time, and that's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it certainly is. Now we're in a situation where no one ever wants to be, where they're on match point, but they're a couple of games behind. It's a great position for Kane, because Kane can now pull shenanigans. He can pull out whatever he wants, and even if he loses this game, he's still got a map in hand. Yeah, so that's a great position for him to be in. He can also force it to the point where the game resets, and he's got all the maps open to him, so even if he loses, then he can pick his favorite map to finish it off. Great ideas. I mean, all sorts of things. It's a really good advantage for Kane going into this, and he's looking strong. State looks like... He doesn't look unbeatable, right? He actually doesn't look unbeatable at all. He looks a bit shaky at times. State can totally beat Kane, but he now only has one chance to do it, and if he loses again, that's going to be that for him.
I mean, these games are super close. That last game, literally one force field to stop those speedings from crawling into the natural probably would have changed the entire game.
Yeah.
Because then as soon as he just warps in a few more rounds and his natural would have been solidified, they're just neck and neck here, but Kane's just barely able to edge out a lot of these games with some great Mutalisk control. And State's going to have to just pick his game up just a little notch higher to really win the next couple games.
Yeah, and you know the worst thing is? This map's Star Station. This is the one that State never picked, which means he definitely doesn't want to play here, but he doesn't really have a choice in the matter, because this is the 5th map. Like, this is why 3-1 is so bad in this kind of format, because that last map is clearly the one you didn't want, but you're going to have to play it anyway. So this could be a 4-1 sweep here for Kane. We could see it. It's going to be a really hard game for State. We're going to go to a quick break, folks. When we come back, going to be game 5. State versus Kane, 3-1 in favor of the Root player. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to what could potentially be the final map here in ShoutCraft America. We may crown our champion right now, but will State be able to pull it back? He is in the most difficult position you could possibly imagine him to be in, having to play on the one map that he clearly did not want to because he refused to pick it, it being the last map in the map pool before the full reset. If he can ride this out, then he will put himself back in a position where he is really in contention for this. The problem is, even if he does, he puts the map picks back in the hands of Kane, which, with the full map open to you...
He can play the same map again.
Yeah, he actually could. He could go right back to Star Station. He could go back to any map he wants, which is why you'd never want to be behind in a best of 7 like this with a limited map pool. If you are ahead, you have that fundamental advantage, and Kane's been able to pull it off quite nicely. State is trying to get himself into the mindset that he needs in order to get a victory here, thinking about what he could do. We could see something very brash here on a map like this.
We definitely could. I mean, out of all the professional level PVZs on Star Station, I don't know if I've ever seen a Protoss really take a 3rd base. I'm trying to remember. I think I've seen it once. But basically, this is a map where it's do or die for Protoss playing a 2-base all-in. We've seen this in pretty much the vast majority of PVZs that are out there. Of course, 2-base all-ins can be very good in this map. The most popular one that I've seen so far has been that 2 Immortal, 2 Colossi, plus a bunch of Gateway guys. Just go ahead and attack.
The super build is so good in
Yes.
this matchup, actually. Like, if State broke that out, it's actually what Hello Kitty used on Suppy at one point, and it's nasty. Like, that 2 Immortal, 2 Colossus just go bam straight onto either the 3rd base or the natural, crush your opponent right then and there. So hard to deal with. You've got to scout it. You must be prepared for it in a very specific way. It's a very powerful build. I assume State knows about it, but is he willing to use it? Because I think honestly at that point you're gonna have some balls to try and pull it out. Because if you lose that army, that's all you've got. Like, it is a really knife-edge build where if even one of those units falls at the wrong time, that could spell the end for your engagement and the end of your tournament life.
It definitely could, and there's also, this is the map where your opponent can assume that you're going to do that build. They can just hard counter it by just base racing you.
Yes.
That build will automatically lose to a Zerg who has their forces already positioned in the corner of the map and just base races you. There's not much you can do. You can recall back, and then they run away, and it gets worse and worse over time because you're based down. And that's actually the exact situation we saw when Party used the build against Sulky in the GSL in the Game 5. It's a Zerg player is like so positive that you're going to do that build. They can kind of do a blind counter as far as just sticking units in the corner and knowing that you're going to move out with one big attack. You're not going to move, trap those forces or anything. And that's something we're going to see. Is Kane going to try to do something like that, saying, okay, I'm up 3-1. The probability is very high. He might do this type of timing, so maybe I can take advantage of it.
Yep, we should also point out the Star Station is cross-only.
Yes.
This is a very recent change to the ladder version of it, and we tend to follow the ladder in this tournament. So, what do you think about cross-only? Does that actually affect the game in any real respect?
It has a huge effect. I mean, tournaments, most of the tournaments really have always used cross-map, just because there's certain, like, the build we've actually been talking about is almost unbeatable if it's closer spawns. You can just go along to those back alleyways where there's no surface area. Force fields are insanely powerful. And the same thing's true with like Terran versus Zerg. If you're both spawned next to each other, like the Zerg's 3rd is within tank shot of the Terran's natural pretty much. So you really want the cross map to make it so those 2-base pushes are stoppable.
All right. Let's see where we're going to go with this one. This could be the final map. We may crown champion right here. Could it be this guy? He's in the southeast position. He is in the blue trunks, playing Zerg. He is ROOTKane versus his opponent to the northwest position. On the map he least favors. Does he have a build? pylon already in the main base, so we're probably going to see Gateway here. He's in the red trunks playing Protoss. He is State.
So State's his theory of always winning with Gateway Expand didn't hold up last game.
No, sadly not. You know, we actually have a lucky song in GSTL for Axiom. It's Soilworks The Living Infinite. They just recently released that album, and it's one of my favorite albums that band's ever made. One of my favorite bands. And the first 2 times they played that song for our player, he always won. So I said, it's my lucky song, and we've never won with it since.
As soon as you say something like that,
you curse it.
Yep, exactly. It doesn't stick with it.
Yeah, maybe I need Artosis to hate the song, and we can start winning with it again.
They'll counteract Artosis curse is stronger than the...
Absolutely. Than the whole, this is going to be my winning song thing. I don't know. I mean, there was almost the TotalBiscuit blessing. I got almost all of the WCS EU predictions correct, except the final game. So I'm on par with that MMA fighter that they got to do the predictions. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing.
Well, MMA fighter has a lot of experience in competitions.
Yes, he does. So, he also plays Starcraft, and to be fair, if I'd beaten him, he'd have probably found me and beat me. So, probably not a very good idea.
You probably wouldn't like your defeat as much as he would like his. So going forward in this game, we're going to see Kane go back to the hatchery first, which is a nice little move there. Noticing that his opponent hasn't really been blocking those hatcheries throughout this game. Why not go ahead and put down the hatchery first? And State is going for the Zealots again before the Nexus, which is something that we really haven't seen many other top Protoss players utilize. Early Zealots.
And to be honest, I don't think that... it's probably because they're not that good, as far as I can tell. Every piece of aggression that we've seen using these has kind of been shut down pretty hard. It puts you in a situation where you have to take your Mothership Core with you. And you've got to use that recoil energy, which means that if something comes in after you... I see this build being totally blind counterable, because what happens is maybe you get your Roach Warren out earlier, and you surge Roaches and run across the map, and then he recalls, and then he doesn't have a Photon Overcharge, and he doesn't have a Time Warp. Like, he couldn't defend his natural in that situation unless he had a lot of sentries. And even then, you know, it's how many sentries do you have? At that stage, we saw 2 sentries for State. He recalled out and then got 2 trapped across the map. You can't really build 4 at your base and then roll out with them, because that means that the attack gets delayed. But if you don't get there and it gets intercepted, then you have the same situation that we just had, where the 2 sentries are caught in the middle of nowhere and they can't really do anything. So I don't know about this, but State obviously believes in it. So, you know, he's way better than me. So I would suggest that there is definitely a method to it.
One theory that could be behind these early Zealots is if the Zerg takes a third before they get Zerging speed, before they get gas, they're very fast 30C against like a Forge opening.
Yeah.
Then, you know, if these 2 Zealots walk over, you might catch the Queen's transferring, Queen's off creep will be chopped up, and then you might even kill the third and be ahead. But of course, we see most Zergs, and then you see Gateway opening, probably because of threats like this, to go ahead and get the Extractor, get some speed, get the speed upgrade before they go ahead and take that third base. In fact, Kane actually going Lair before third base as well. So
that's an interesting change.
2 base tech build. We haven't seen him do this yet this series.
And this is what I was saying earlier. When you've got that map in hand, you can do funky things like that. These 2 Zealots are actually just gonna have to recall. Like, they can't fight that. So
that's right.
Again, what's the purpose of that? What I do like is the fact that this was kind of almost surely a fake, because there was no pylon out on the map. So is he trying to force an overreaction? I still don't know. What do you think?
You know, if you can get the Zerg to not build drones, that's always really a great thing, of course. And the other thing he could be looking for there is to see if the Zerg has a third base and put some pressure on that. And, and it's a way to scout. I mean, a lot of Protoss use hallucination to scout, and State says, I'm just going to send Zealots across the map and see what they can do, you know, reveal what's going on.
Well, I mean, the argument they can then make, of course, in State's favor is that it does have him dictating the tempo of the game, which helps him an awful lot. You don't want Kane to be able to do that. But he is going to push out again. Now, there is not really a good proxy pylon in position here. It's actually all the way at the back. There's a probe there, which could, and now it's moving out. And look, there we go. So, here's the weird thing. He's not pressuring a third because there isn't one.
This is true. I mean, even if the Zerg's on 2 bases, sometimes if you put enough pressure with Zealots, if they try to go mute attack or they try to rush straight to Swarmos, You can sometimes do some damage here if they don't have enough spine cores up, but we actually see that Kane not only has pretty good creep spread out in front of his main, but he also is basically doing a Hydralisk rush.
Yes.
And this is a build where if the Protoss scouts it, they can usually defend with force fields, but he was using 2 hallucinations to scout.
That
and
was
then
completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
That must have been a misclick.
For sure it was. And now he sees the Hydralisk, but he has to get back on his side of the map.
It's a Nidus play.
This is going to be very tough to hold.
Yeah.
He doesn't have as much energy on the Mothership Core as he'd like. He doesn't have as much energy on the Sentries as he'd like. And those are the 2 of the most important things against Hydras.
It's a fake Nidus play.
Oh, as soon as it finishes C, he cancels it. He's just going to walk across the map and do a straight forward attack. Which, actually, this map is long enough. I don't actually see this.
That's actually not very good at all. Like, that gives plenty of time for his opponent to do that. I mean, what I'd much like him to do now is sit back and take that 3rd base and just say, ha-ha. You know, your attack comes in to take the 3rd. There isn't one. I'm doing Nidus. No, I'm not. And then go in for, you know, that would be good. That, surely he wouldn't. He's still pushing, though.
Well, he's taking the 3rd and droning, so this is a fake push with the 3 base unit transition behind it, so he's kind of doing that ha-ha thing, but you might as well move out across the map and scare the Protoss,
It's
right?
risky, though, because those Hydras, if those Hydras get caught out, they're not getting out of there. They will die. They're just not quick enough. There's a Dark Shrine going in behind this, so we're seeing funky stuff coming out from both of these guys right now.
I mean, the one thing I'm worried about is the Zerg has been on so low econ throughout the whole game. I mean, he actually was building Hydras off of only, I think, 38 drones. So
yeah,
this wasn't a 2-base Zerg build. This is a 1.5 base Zerg build. He never actually saturated his 2 bases at all. I mean, now he's been droning behind us, so just now he's hitting 2-base saturation. But he's still 2-base saturation with units so far. Hydras are not cost efficient against Sentry Stalker. The force fields are good. I mean, Hydras can do well against gateway units because you can outnumber them, but he's never had the economy to outnumber State, and I actually don't see how he can defend his attack if they just keep warping units.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't
counter
it?
might work.
Yep,
Oh,
if he can break
great
his way through now, it looks like it's going to be shut down. Zealots moving in, more gateways added on, and DT's
State's army is actually split in 2.
Yeah, that's actually kind of strange, and
and now he's countering, and State's army is way out of position.
it does have blink. He can recall right now. Does he have the energy? Yeah, he recalls with his army.
But the Stalkers are stuck.
They do have blink,
they have
though.
blink,
Yeah, so they should be able to. And he's now warping in Dark Templar. And these are now moving in. In fact, he's already attacking with them. And I don't believe there's any... There's the Overseer coming in
There's
here.
6 Dark Templar.
That base could get killed here
That
quite
base
easily.
It's dead. It's just, I mean...
The Overseer's on the way, maybe, but I mean, now he catches the Hydras out. This is a sneaky thing. There's only one Overseer. The Hydra's kind of getting picked off. He does stop that, but he actually pushes an Archon right into the center there and goes for the engagement. I don't like that. The rest of his army's behind him. He needs to get those force fields out. There comes the blink in. There's quite a lot of mutalisks on the field as well. Good use of the force fields. He needs to back off like 1 square so the Hydras can't hit him, but he doesn't do that. He's getting backed into a corner right now. Down goes that Mothership Core as well. More sentries being put into play here. There are just enough Stalkers to kill this army, but it is mutually assured destruction right now, and the reinforcements, of course, rallying in from the Zerg player. If he blinks in and kills that 3rd and gets out, then that would be great, but he's not. He's engaging.
Oh, this is a rough spot for State. I mean, if he fought with his army together, there's no way he would have lost that engagement, but now he has no sentries, so the Zerg keeps rallying speedlings in. It's going to be very difficult to be cost-efficient against speedlings with just blink
he could lose right now. I mean, he's losing so many units here.
I think it's over.
Yeah, it's looking really grim, honestly. He's not dead, but he's on 2 bases. The Zerg's on 3. The Zerg now has Mutatech out. State doesn't have anything to deal with that. He's now warping in Stalkers. If he killed the 3rd, maybe I could have said that was okay. But as it stands, State has lost 3,000 more resources than his opponent and didn't get the 3rd base.
A very kind of awkward engagement here. State had a much larger army, but then he kept kind of... It got all strung out. When his units didn't have discipline. They didn't stand, shoulder to shoulder, formed a cohesive ranks that a Protoss army really needs, and he paid the price for it. His army just basically got routed in pieces and totally decimated.
And now there's a big force of Hydras and Mutas coming right at him, and the Stalkers can't escape. They had to blink backwards right there to avoid the Lings, but now they get crushed by the Muta count, and State 57 supply, and that is it. GG, ladies and gentlemen. And we have, with a 4-1 victory, ROOTKane as your ShoutCraft America champion.
What a nice set of games from Kane there. Trademark of his EVP is that Mulus play. utilizing it extensively in pretty much every single map, doing that transition at some point, and he's got to be happy with that win.
Oh, you can tell on his face. He's super happy.
That is the face of a happy Canadian.
Grinning from ear to ear is his simple response to that one. But he made it happen, man, and Kane actually picks up that would be his first major tournament win, I believe.
Yes. I don't think he's even played in that many other events until now. So that's a huge confidence booster to go to your first big LAN and just take it down 4-1 in a very convincing fashion. I mean, the only map he lost was Belshire, and that was due mostly to Mutas just being caught out of position a couple times too many.
Yeah, certainly. Really strong performance there by Kane. Very, very impressive indeed. And yeah, that would be his first major win. Only a couple of little events in 2012 there for him, but that's a good amount of money. That's definitely the most he's ever won. And it's sad for State, man. It really is. State obviously not feeling good about that at all, as you wouldn't in that kind of situation. And like he had good ideas, but being forced to play on that map as your final one, that happens. If you fall that far behind, then you end up in a really awkward position. So, congratulations to ROOTKane for his win here, and commiserations to State. He still goes home with $2,000 and all of the tips that you have given. So, thank you very much, guys, for all of your support to these players. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back with an interview with our winner, ROOTKane. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end. We have finally finished ShoutCraft America, and I'm here with the grand finalist winner, ROOTKane. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a really good series, and State played really well, so I'm happy about it, and I hope there's more ShoutCrafts to come.
Now, we saw in the first couple of games what looked to be a very prepared strategy with very specific transitions in play. Did you actually prepare those strategies with your teammates going into this?
It's pretty much my standard build. I practice it a lot on ladder. Ling Hydra into Muta is what a lot of Koreans are doing right now, and it works really, really well versus Forge Fast Expand. In the last couple of games, I wasn't too comfortable because he was opening Gate Expand. So that gave me a bit more trouble, and those games were closer, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, we definitely tend to agree with that. We saw that early aggression coming in. We saw a bit of a tempo pace there from your opponent's State. However, State was forced to play on Star Station, a map that he did not choose. Now, how did you feel going into Star Station? Obviously, you hadn't actively picked it either.
Yeah, I thought I was going to Hydra Ling Nidus, because Star Station has a really big main. So I thought I was going to do that, but then turns out that he scouted it in time with some Phoenix, which was really, really good. So I just tried to transition into a third, and he attacked from kind of a bad angle, and I just got a good fight going in there. So I ended up winning, which was really, really nice.
It's always good to hear. Now, before we hand you the trophy, and good luck fitting that one in your suitcase, I want to ask you a little bit about how you feel the North American scene is currently progressing. There's been a lot of negativity surrounding it right now, and as an NA player that hasn't really competed in any major international events so far, how do you feel about the health of the NA scene?
Well, the NA scene obviously is trying to catch up to the Korean scene. I don't think it's close right now, but tournaments like this really, really help because forces players to practice and forces players to really just get out there and ladder. So that's really nice. A lot of people say that the North American scene isn't as good as the European scene, but I think the European scene has a lot more players and a lot more depth, but the few players from NA like Scarlet, Huck, Major can really, really compete with some of the top players. So it's really good to have them in the NA scene as well.
All right, we are going to have the trophy brought to you now by your fellow teammate and MLG caster. There you go. Axel Tosser brings that in for you. He was going to try and steal it for himself there for a change. I was looking at he was being very, very avaricious with that, so don't trust him around it, I've got to say. So you receive the ShoutCraft America Freedom Branch, as we like to call it, which you will now take back to Canada in a slightly awkward situation. But it's okay. You're importing just a little bit of freedom into Canada, which, as we know, has none.
Sorry?
All right. Okay, Kane, do you have any words for your team, for your sponsors, for your fans?
Yeah, there's a big promotion going on for Papa John's right now. So go over to pizza.gg and order through Root. Make sure it's through Root. You don't want the other teams. Although, I guess you can do those too. Big thanks to Root for picking me up pretty recently. Big thanks to some of my practice partners, Henry. There's a few others I'm forgetting for sure, and thank you to you and Jenna for putting on this tournament. It was really great, and like I said, it helps kind of grow the NA scene.
Fantastic. All right, folks, you have been watching ShoutCraft America. Before you leave, of course, I would like to give a few thanks of my own. Big thanks, of course, go to the person that made this tournament possible, which was Jenna Bain. Her organization, her ideas, and her hard work that actually made this tournament possible. Big thanks, of course, to Zook, who is responsible for graphics, as well as Brom, who is responsible for the intro video for this tournament. Big thanks go out to Vaqueth, our admin, all the way through the series, who did fantastic work. My guest co-casters, which include Day9, Husky, Greg Idra Fields, Rotterdam, Frodan, and AxSlav. And last but by no means least, a big thanks to all of you for supporting the North American scene. We hope to see you again in Season 2. We hope you had a great time today. Check out all the VODs over on youtube.com/TotalBiscuit or catch them on twitch.tv/TotalBiscuit under the video section. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Coming up next, we have WCS North America, the round of 16 group, featuring Apocalypse, STC, Moonglade, and Axiom Crank. Please do stay tuned for that. Thank you very much for watching. And it's goodbye from New York, goodbye from our champion ROOTKane, and we will see you next time.